All right, let's get it. Drive time Monday afternoon, about 14 minutes past the hour, 2 o'clock. Another cloudy and chilly May day outside, but temperatures improving throughout the week. We're going to have a really nice weekend, Memorial Day weekend coming up. But as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. Porter Larson behind the glass today, producing the show, booking the show. We got a lot of really good guests on the program to get that weekend started out the right way. The week started out the right way. Hope you had a great weekend. Happy Monday to you. And it's good to have you with us on a jam-packed edition of the radio show. We have conference finals set in pro basketball and pro hockey. The Timberwolves and the Thunder will tip off tomorrow after OKC was able to dispatch the Denver Nuggets with relative ease in Game 7. We'll get to some Game 7 takeaways. We'll talk about the future of Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. Michael Malone is going to be on the coverage for ESPN on the Western Conference Finals side of things, the coach that was jettisoned out and sent packing. The New York Knicks actually did it. Yeah, that's right. The New York Knicks actually did it. And it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Since we last spoke on Friday night, it was a massacre in Midtown Manhattan. New York 119, Boston 81. And the Knicks advance on to the conference finals for the first time in 25 years. And when last they were there, they faced Reggie Miller and the Indiana Pacers. And coincidentally enough, this time around, they will face the Indiana Pacers once again, this time led by a really good lead guard in Tyrese Halliburton, a bunch of perimeter players that want to fight everybody. So we'll preview the conference finals, and then we'll look back on the action that took place over the weekend. In the world of pro basketball, we'll also talk a little NBA draft, a little NBA combine. The Utah Jazz sit at number 5, as we, of course, talked about ad nauseum last week. Reports are that Philadelphia is interested in moving on from number 3. According to Jeremy Wu from ESPN, the names that are out there attached to this rumor, that's all it is: Kevin Durant and one Lauri Markkanen. What would you do if you were the Utah Jazz? So we'll talk about some of the potential that the Jazz have to add talent to this roster. We have entered an era of intense parity in the world of pro basketball, which should be good news for a team that plays its basketball in Salt Lake City, but the Jazz are unprepared to capitalize on it, at least as of now. How can they change that? We'll get into it on the show today. The latest mock draft from Jonathan Gavoni will tell you who he has the Jazz drafting at 5. And go over some rumors, some offseason rumors. As we talked about with Sean, with OC during Crosstalk, Brock Purdy got paid, didn't have a chance to really react to that. He is going to make about $53 million annually. That pays him more than Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, Justin Herbert, names like that, even Lamar. So we'll get to the latest in the world of the NFL offseason. Of course, the conversation about the tush push continues to make its way throughout the course of NFL rule makers. Nick Sirianni gets a multi-year contract extension. And rookie mini camps going on around the world of the NFL. So we'll get to some of that on the show. RSL has gone with a sneaky strategy of building a soccer team that does not try to score goals. Pretty risky. See if it works out, Cotton. It's not working out in the meantime. RSL has gone almost 250 minutes without a goal. They are winless in their last 4. They welcome in the best team in MLS. Vancouver will be in town coming up on Saturday. So not great, Bob. Not great, Bob, in the world of Real Salt Lake. We'll get to some of that on the show today. Scotty Scheffler wins his 3rd major championship over the weekend at Quail Hollow. The Wanamaker Trophy is his. He did try to break it in half during his celebration, but Tony Finau finishes tied for 19th after the Green Mile got to Tony, but he ends up walking away with a cool $200K and a top 20 finish in majors. Do a little golf on the show today as well. So a lot to do on a Monday edition of the program. Happy Monday to you. Our first guest will be Bobby Marks. Bobby's going to be good today to kind of walk us through where we're at right now in the world of pro basketball, the parity that has presented itself, and whether or not the Jazz can get involved with other small market teams like Oklahoma City and Minnesota and Indiana and Milwaukee and Denver, etc., and the like. So good day to have Bobby on the show. More basketball with Tom Haberstroh. Our friend Tony Parks will be live in studio. We'll do a bunch of local stuff with Tony. And then Easton Folster, who's the executive director of the UGA, Easton only wants to talk Knicks today, but we are going to talk a little PGA Championship and a little PGA golf. But our guy Easton, Utah local, is a Knicks fan. So, we're going to do a little of that with our guy today on the program. So, Bobby Marks, Tom Haberstroh, Tony Parks, Easton Folster, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. And that guy, Porter Larson, we were texting during the game on Friday. No part of me thought we were going to see what we actually saw. That game was over. I was skeptical, I would say, until about 4 minutes left. And then I just started screaming to the TV, take the starters out, Tom, please. How'd you digest Friday night?
Much like that. I mean, I thought the Knicks played really well. I was really confident going into halftime, and I thought that they had the series in hand. But like you, the last 10 minutes of the game, I was just like, dude, we're up by like 40 points. What are we doing here? And listen, Tom Thibodeau's the coach that has them in the Eastern Conference Finals. So the credit is given where it is due. But if you are a Knicks fan, you've also seen teams that have had the wheels fall off because you run the wheels off of them, right? Because you don't have the depth. And with Tom Thibodeau specifically, that's always kind of been a narrative. So I think people are a little up in arms about it. I'm cognizant of it as well, and kind of reacted the same way. But result's a result. We've got the Final Four NBA edition, and I think it should be a lot of fun.
It should be a lot of fun. So conference finals time in the world of pro basketball. We are high speed ahead to the NBA draft. A lot to do. Our first guest today will be Bobby Marks, the great Bobby Marks from ESPN. But before we get to Bobby, courtesy of our good friends, your good friends too at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance. Add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup, whether it's points, rebounds, or assists. Take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. You can turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series. Starting with the play-in round, every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you into the Take-Two ticket sweepstakes, which will get you and a +1 a VIP trip to the ship. So here's what you do. You download the Prize Picks app today, use the promo code ESPN700, and they're going to hook you up with $5. They're going to hook you up with $50 when you play your first $5 bet. Do not even need to win the bet to get the $50. It is on the house. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700, and you will get $50 when you play your first $5 bet. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. All right, so in the world of pro basketball, we have the conference finals set. It will be OKC and Minnesota coming up tomorrow night, 6:30 Mountain Time on ESPN. And then on Wednesday night, it is New York and Indianapolis from Madison Square Garden at 6 o'clock. Mountain Time on TNT. So ESPN has you covered with the West. TNT has you covered with the East. And now we're in a scenario where for the 7th straight year, we will have the 7th different NBA champ. So where we moved into, and I think coming up this offseason will be another example of exactly what pro basketball has done with the new collective bargaining agreement that went into effect a few years ago, and will be the reality for another 3, 4, 5 years, depending on how they decide to traverse the space of intense extreme parity in the world of basketball in the NBA, okay? And that was intentional from Adam Silver, who got sick of hearing from owners like, if Miami can just add LeBron and Bosh, and Golden State can just add Durant to Steph and Clay and Draymond, we have no prayer. We have no chance if that's the deal, okay? There will always be space for the bigger markets and the destination cities to attract players that simply want to live in LA, or they want to live in Miami, or they want to live in, I'll say New York, although the Knicks and the Nets have been unable to capitalize on really any of that. It's mostly the warm weather, climate-friendly cities, namely Los Angeles, and Miami's been a benefactor as well. Of course, Phoenix built up a team that was supposed to be good on paper but hasn't been. So that will never change. The Lakers snapped their fingers this year and turned a 32-year-old injury-prone Anthony Davis into a 25-year-old Luka Doncic. And stuff like that will never go away. The Lakers are the biggest example, the Celtics too, because the Celtics are the most successful pro basketball team in the history of the NBA, followed closely behind by the LA Lakers, and there's certainly a debate between those two. You'll always be able to figure it out. The Lakers bridged even George Mikan into Kareem, into even Wilt, then Kareem, and then, of course, you go from Kareem, then later on to Magic. Magic bridges it, later on to Shaq and Kobe. And then, of course, LeBron decides he wants to spend the final few years of his NBA career in Los Angeles. And then, boom, they've got Luka. So Luka makes them relevant again for another decade, depending on how long he wants to play. So that will never change. But what has changed is the second apron has actually legitimately scared billionaires. If you ever wanted to know the answer to the trivia question, what scares billionaires that own NBA teams, we have it. It's the second apron. Okay, we've already seen the Clippers make a tough decision. Paul George walks. We've seen the Denver Nuggets allow a lot of the rotational pieces around Nikola Jokic leave after very successful seasons and try to plug them with vet minimum contract guys like Russell Westbrook, who looked like he was point shaving during the playoffs this year. It was a atrocious idea at the start. As I always say about him, you can have him for free. Or, young players like Julian Strawther or Zeke Naji, and trying to surround Jokic with good players to take advantage of his prime. We've already seen teams forced to make very difficult decisions due to financial and economic restraints. And coming up this offseason, we're going to see it again. We're going to see it from the Phoenix Suns, who probably will move on from Kevin Durant. We're probably going to see it from the Boston Celtics, even if Jason Tatum did not get hurt. We probably would have seen it anyway because a new ownership group, after signing the documents, got an email that said, oh, by the way, if you keep the team next year, the luxury tax bill is $500 million just for the right to have this team, who out in the second round. So no ownership is going to agree to that. I wouldn't be stunned if they move on from Jaylen Brown because I think they have to. I don't think you have any other chance. Point of me bringing it up is we have entered and have been in now for about 3 or 4 years this new era of NBA basketball that will continue for another 4 years or so. And it might not continue after that because there are enough people that don't really love. And look, let's call it what it is. It's a hard cap. And I can remember when the new CBA became a reality, I was kind of reviewing some of the numbers and some of the information. I thought to myself, this is a hard cap. They're just not saying it out loud. And ultimately, if you talk to guys around the league, yes, that's what it is. It is a hard cap. At a certain number, you are hard capped, period. And then you have to make tough decisions. So we've been in this reality for a while. And teams like the Denver Nuggets and the Milwaukee Bucks, and what we have now is the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Indiana Pacers and Oklahoma City, who is positioned not just now but for the future. We'll throw San Antonio in there as a result of their lottery luck. Let's call it what it is. There will be a bunch of teams in markets even smaller than ours, not necessarily analogous to ours, but smaller than ours, that are positioned to have a chance to win the thing every year for the next 4 or 5 years. Here's the bad news. The Jazz are simply not prepared to take advantage of what the league has created for teams that play in cities like Salt Lake. They have failed to put themselves in a situation where they can capitalize on the new reality of NBA basketball. Does it mean that they'll fail forever? No, it doesn't. Does it mean that they have a ton of work to do to even be relevant? Yeah, it does. And that starts with the draft, which leads me to this. The reports over the weekend are that San Antonio, and look, these are only reports, okay? We're just talking about rumors. It's a great thing about Sports Talk Radio. You can just kind of dig into some of this stuff. No idea if any of this will come to fruition, but the reports over the weekend out of San Antonio is that they are prepared to take Dylan Harper. They're prepared to take Dylan, let him grow next to Stephon Castle, learn from De'Aaron Fox, kind of like a backup quarterback situation, kind of like Jackson Dart in New York, sitting behind Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited, our guy, before he is given the starting job, maybe in a couple of years. So if San Antonio is no longer entertaining moving off of 2, what happens with Philly at 3? And Jeremy Wu from ESPN reported this morning, and I retweeted it, if they still call it that, the Philadelphia 76ers are willing to move on from 3. And the names that he threw out there were Kevin Durant and Lauri Markkanen. Now, when you look at the books of the Philadelphia 76ers, there isn't anything that makes this trade possible outside of a Tyrese Maxey, Paul George throw-in, I don't think they're going to trade Embiid. I think they've done the calculation that when he's healthy, he's still very special. But just hypothetically speaking, if you're the Jazz, do you entertain that? Do you even entertain trading Lowry for 3 straight up, which is a really tough thing to do? Lowry's about to turn 28. I think he actually has a birthday coming up or close to this day. He'll be 28 throughout the course of this year. And that is kind of smack dab in the middle of your prime with maybe a couple of years left of your prime. And if we're honest, he doesn't fit the timeline as far as when this team could even be relevant again because they're not close. So do you pull the ripcord with clearly your best player to grab another high pick and then send the message to the fan base like, yes, it's going to be rough for a while, but at least we have a couple of building blocks we feel good about? Because I don't see a pathway forward, not to quote Quinn Snyder when he decided he didn't want to work for this new ownership group. I just don't see another pathway forward for the Utah Jazz based off the roster they have right now. And there is urgency because there are enough people that don't love this CBA and what it's done to balance out the parity in pro basketball that it might change in 4 years. I don't know that that's enough time for the Jazz to put something together to capitalize on the ability to roster construct in a smaller market that's not a destination. But we got a couple of good guests to talk about this. So Bobby Marks will join us coming up on the other side. We're going to dig into this with Bobby. And then Tom Haberstroh joins us too. We have Tony Parks, Easton Folster. We have a jam-packed, busy Monday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Conference finals are set in both the NBA and the NHL. We'll do some hockey a little bit later. The Utah Mammoth set to draft fourth overall as the NHL draft will take place after the NBA draft. The Jazz did not get the same luck as the hockey club, and our next guest will walk us through the potential offseason for the Jazz as we talk some basketball with one of our favorites on a Monday afternoon. Bobby Marks, happy Monday, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're all right. I mean, let's just start here. The lottery's rigged, and everybody hates the Jazz, and we can't catch a break. So let's just start with the scripted world of the NBA, Bobby.
Well, you can probably add Washington and Detroit last year and the list of teams. Listen, you have a better chance. How the reformed lottery odds are, you have a better chance of not picking in the top three than picking in the top three. I mean, I think they had like a 50-something% chance of picking at 5. So, yeah, it is. I would say it's probably not designed to reward some of the top teams, and just like the league in general right now, there is a lot of parity when it comes to the process of the lottery.
For sure. And Zanuck was great with the media afterwards because everybody keeps saying they fell to 5, and Justin's like, well, we actually had a better chance of drafting 5 than we had at 1.
Right.
But, you know, the deal out here, when you're asked as a fan base to suffer through literally the worst season the Jazz have ever had, you're just kind of hoping for more of a reward. So kind of your thoughts on where we find ourselves with the Jazz as they enter the offseason with 2 first-round picks and a number of decisions, Bobby, that need to be made.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I do think, listen, I think there's a ton of options, certainly with the draft as far as the picks that you have, not just in June, but certainly all the draft assets that you have in the future. And you have a little bit of everything as far as, some expiring contracts, your younger players that you're still trying to figure out as far as, who are your foundational players. You've got the Kessler extension to figure out. We'll see who becomes available this offseason as far as what big named player or players, and I think there'll probably be a few. Does it make sense kind of dipping your toe in that water or that deep end there as far as for that? Because you do have the assets here. I think the biggest thing I think is, I said this to Joe Cronin, who's the Trailblazers GM. I saw him in the elevator in Chicago for the Combine, and they had a nice season. They won 36 games. And I said the biggest thing that you can give to a fan base is hope. I think that's the biggest thing as far as hope and a clear direction as far as where the roster is going. And I think if you're in Utah, that's the sense of direction here, because as you know, going in the lottery or bottoming out and trying to get a top 3 pick, certainly if that's the goal for next year, we already went through it, and it's trying to put a needle in the haystack as far as getting one of those A-level players that will be available again next year, right? I mean, they're going to get a good player at where they are. Is it Cooper Flag? Probably not. But they're still going to be in a position to get a good player with their lottery pick and a good player where they are in the early 20s.
I can tell you, and look, I don't pretend to speak for every Jazz fan, but I don't feel like there is a lot of hope, Bobby, right now for the organization, at least on the outside looking in. And I still have friends over there, and I know how disappointed they were that they didn't get better luck. And ultimately, I wonder what you make of the possibility of them being a little bit bold this offseason and utilizing the bevy of assets and clean books to maybe add a couple of veterans to expedite the growth of the young players. Or do you think this is going to be an arduous, painful process that will last for another 3-4 years?
Listen, if Giannis became available, just hypothetically talking, it would be negligent not to put a phone call in to see what the price would be. Not just with Utah, but the other 29 players. If Trae Young became available, or I think it has a lot of it has to do with what's left of the roster. Do we still have options to add, or whatever? If we go out and get 2 players, we basically we wiped clean. as far as what we have left and what happens if one of those players leaves when they can become a free agent 2 years or 3 years from now. And are we basically starting from ground zero again here? So I think I think they'll be aggressive. I think you always have to be aggressive here, but being aggressive and being able to go out and do a deal and being comfortable doing it is two different things. Listen, the Western Conference is a bear. I mean, it is not easy. You would love to be in a position where Detroit was a year ago, and certainly where, listen, they had the worst record and they still picked fifth in the lottery or in the draft, but they were able to triple their wins because they had a foundation player in Cade Cunningham. That's the problem where Utah is right now. Is it's different than having Shea in Oklahoma City and having 3 lean years and basically go out and draft Jalen and Ched and add other players with their roster. And then with Detroit, you get a healthy Cade and you add shooting, and you got Thompson, Doran, and Ivy, and Holland, and you got both Beasley and Harris. Like that is the biggest Achilles I look at when it's in Utah. It's not roster management and all that stuff. It's like, who is the blue chip guy that you can plant a flag on the hill and say, this is our franchise player? There is none. I mean, that's the reality of it right now. And when you have that, that's what gives fans hope that you can build around that player.
For sure. There was one piece of actually official business, Bobby, that happened out here since you and I last spoke, and Will Hardy had already had his 4th and 5th year options picked up. So it's not like he was a lame duck. However, they decided to extend him through 2031. And if he coaches throughout his entire contract tenure, he'll
certainly, whether it be, and I know he's under contract, whether it had been a team like Phoenix or some of these other potential openings, I think it's rewarding him for basically going through this rebuild that they were that they're going through and could potentially be going through again next year here. So I think that kind of comes hand in hand as far as why, you just didn't exercise the options, but you probably go out and extend him.
All right, moving back to where the league finds itself as it pertains to the way they determine draft order. As a result of the data we have since 2019, where the worst team in the league has not been rewarded with the number 1 overall pick, and so many teams have fallen while other teams have risen. Do you think that will change the approach of teams like the Jazz this year that were just unserious about winning? And look, we even got a little bit of an admission from Zanuck after the season. Jay-Z was addressing the media, and he said something like, we did everything we could to position ourselves with the best chance possible, right? It was the closest we got to a front office guy actually admitting what they did. And look, I get it. As you know, I mean, I get the deal. I know what you can and can't say. But now that we know that guarantees nothing, do you think we'll see a team out here that actually, I don't know, for lack of a better phrase, puts their best foot forward?
I think in a perfect world, you would like to be where San Antonio is this year, as far as in a position to contend for a play-in, and then you find yourself in that 8 range, and listen, they go up to 2. I mean, there's no guarantee you're going to go to 2. I mean, Dallas wins a play-in game and loses in the play-in final and gets the number 1 pick, and they were 11. So there has to be substantial growth, and I'm not saying substantial growth where you're basically trading 5 first-round picks for a player that maybe wins you 5 or 6 more games. But I don't think there is anything wrong with putting yourself in a position where even if you're in the 11th or 12th position and you're contending for one of the final play-ins, because the history has shown that you can still move up in the lottery, and you probably have a better chance of moving up in the lottery than where you are as far as 4 and 5. I've lived through it. I mean, I lived through it in 2010 in New Jersey, and the lottery odds were different. I mean, we were 12 and 70 and wound up getting the 3rd pick in the draft. So I totally understand it as far as why they went about doing it and why teams go about doing it here. But it is getting to a point where you do have to kind of, when did they trade Donovan? 2022?
Yep, it'll be 4 years coming up. Yeah.
And this was actually like the first real true rebuild because you overachieved the first 2 years and stuff. So but I do think you can put something on the court where you can win games and still be in a position to draft pretty high.
Okay, I know you're not a hot take guy, which I appreciate about you. You know, what you do is a great job of educating us about what's actually happening as opposed to what you think should happen. But since we're in this weird space in Salt Lake, moving into the fourth year of a rebuild or a 2-year tear, whatever it is, it's 4 years since they were good. Do you like the way the league goes about the draft process? Do you like the fact that they are trying to dissuade teams from being unserious about the endeavor and encouraging front offices to have integrity about their approach? There's the NFL model where they simply reward in inverse orders. There's a ton of pieces out there about what they should or should not do. What do you think about the way the league approaches the whole thing?
I would be on board with rewarding a team, basically the NFL model, as far as going by, the standings, as far as, whoever finished worst. Let's eliminate the lottery and say, but if you finish with the first pick, then you are basically, there's a void as far as you finishing first the following year, right? Like you don't have the option to get number one consistently here, or there's a kind of a penalty system there. I don't think the league will ever do that. But listen, if we're going to do based it off just standings wise, then we could see the same teams in the top three all the time, right? It just keeps on spitting out the same scenarios and everything like that because there is no incentive to win games there. I understand why the league did it. I get it and everything like that, but we still saw teams this year. I saw Ted Leonsis, the owner of the Wizards, be like, "Oh, we weren't tanking and stuff. We were developing guys," and great, that's another way of using that. But there's also like when you're not playing guys who are healthy, or you're playing guys, or you're treating games like preseason games, and guys play 20 minutes, and you don't play them when you're leading in the fourth quarter. That's probably you screw around with the integrity of the game a little bit here. So I don't know what the rule, the right way to go about doing it here. You're trying to find a fine balance here, but you would like to see teams, because it eventually, like, you're just basically running in mud forever. As far as if you don't land one of these a top pick here, but you still have the position, as I said, you can still get a good player at 5 if you do your work and you develop him right and he fits in there. I mean, it just puts a little more pressure on the organization.
One more thing here, then we'll move on to teams that are actually still playing. San Antonio, too, is interesting, only because if it is the Dylan Harper kid, there might be some redundancy on that roster with Stephon Castle and De'Aaron Fox, but the reports are that they're going to hang on to 2 and draft him and let him develop, which is probably the right thing to do. A lot of people out here wondering if there's a way the Jazz could utilize the assets in their back pocket to move up. I don't know if Philly at 3 is an option. Do you think anybody in front of the Jazz would be open to moving their pick?
Oh, I would think so. I mean, certainly, I think outside of Dallas at 1, I think if it makes sense, Dylan Harper is a really nice player. But if you're willing to move some of that, that Cleveland or Minnesota draft equity, or that Phoenix one, that's kind of the golden ticket in 31. I think there's a way for you to get up there. I think it's just a matter of how much separation you feel Dylan Harper is compared to what you can get at number 5. I think that's the big question is it worth in that type of deal compared to something that maybe could become available down the road. So when you have the equity like Utah does and some of these other teams, I think there's options to do that as far as getting up there but it will cost you. I mean, that's the big thing. It will cost you to move up, whether it be 3 spots or 2 spots.
All right, Bobby, last Thursday I went to bed. And I was tossing and turning, picturing Charles Smith missing 4 layups, picturing Anthony Mason throwing a ball to Reggie Miller, picturing Patrick Ewing having a finger roll go off the back of the rim, picturing John Stark shooting 3 of 18. And no part of me thought the New York Knicks were winning on Friday night, even without Jason Tatum. That's just the deal with this organization that I've been a part of since I was 10 years old, and am thrilled to have a Knick team to cheer for. I wonder what you make of the way they've gone about this roster construction and who Jalen is and the way Tom has been able to traverse this space in New York back in the conference finals for 25 years facing that same Indiana Pacer team.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was a senior in college. I had just graduated when that infamous Game 7 happened when the Ewing finger roll rolled off the rim there. So I do remember that series, the multiple series during the 90s. Well, New York is different than the other three teams that are left. Oklahoma City, Indiana, and Minnesota, 8 deep, right? I mean, 8 really good players as far as how they're maybe OKC's a little deeper. New York is really reliant on their 5. They're starting 5. They play a ton of minutes. We know that. You've seen a little bit of Robinson. I mean, a lot of Robinson, certainly in that Boston series. And then you sprinkle in Deuce McBride here. They're heavily reliant on Brunson, as we know. I think they run into trouble when the ball sticks and is not. There's the others basically are standing around. I do think that series is going to be reliant on how involved Towns is. You saw in Game 6 when he is involved and he's aggressive in the beginning and he's not just standing on the perimeter. They're pretty dangerous here. I do find it funny that people in New York, and I am from Northern Jersey, have basically kind of penciled them in to get to an NBA Finals because, man, Indiana is a good team. I mean, they're fun. They have they can play any way you want. They can go up and down. They can try to get physical with you. I thought they were more physical than Cleveland. But New York is kind of a different way as far as how they've constructed their roster. They went all in with Bridges, and they flipped, certainly Dante and Julius for Towns. And as I said, they're really heavy. They're a team that really can't sustain. If they have an injury to one of their core guys, they're going to be in trouble. Where maybe you can say if Lou Dort or Alex Caruso get hurt in Oklahoma City, that they can still get by Minnesota here. So it's an interesting way that Leon has been able to put that roster together. You're right. I did think even without Tatum that game was going to go back to Boston for Game 7, just because I thought Boston was the better team throughout the series. Even when Tatum went down, I thought they still had enough to, give them credit for getting to a conference finals.
Tell me this, Bobby. I mean, look, I've known Tom Thibodeau for years. He was an assistant under Jeff, and I respect the man immensely. And, of course, I would never second-guess anything. But you referenced how reliant they are on their 5.
Yeah.
When it's 110-74, like with 6 minutes left, can we just go ahead and set aside the ethos and maybe take the guy? Like, are you watching thinking the same thing I am when it's like a 40-point game with 6 minutes left?
It's funny. It's one of those where, like, when you're sitting in the stands, I'm sure, and I think Leon sits like 4 rows behind them. It's almost like one of those games where you like give a note to one of the courtside attendants to just give it to one of the assistants to pull these guys, please, right? Like they're lucky. Listen, they're lucky that because if someone got hurt, I mean, can you imagine if OG pulled a hamstring or somebody got hurt? Now he would have been certainly that would have been widely scrutinized over the next week. Yeah, I do think that is, especially when the other team kind of pulls their own guys, right? I mean, when the other team waves their white flag, it's like, okay, we're done, right? Like, put our guys in. There's no way a team is coming back from 35, 40 points.
Yeah, I didn't need to see Jalen fighting over a Xavier Tillman pick, please. Like, what are we doing here? But let's move out. Let's move out this way, Bobby. I wonder what you make of the way Minnesota has been able to go about their business. And look, I mean, it's interesting out this way because I'm watching Donovan with obviously it didn't end well with Cleveland, but Rudy's been great. Conley's been great. Like all the ex-Jazz guys have gone on to really play well for teams, and I'm thrilled for Rudy, and I cheer for Mike, who doesn't. But what do you make of, and look, obviously it's different with Stephen Curry, but kind of same question, the way Minnesota's gone about this roster construction, and what do you think their chances are against OKC in the conference final?
Yeah, it's interesting. You get to a conference finals a year ago, and usually you would roll back. Atlanta did it a few way back when, and it kind of hurt them a little bit. But Minnesota was different because certainly from a financial angle, they were extremely, extremely expensive. And to basically break up Towns into 2 players with Randall and DiVincenzo, I think was important to them because from a flexibility standpoint, listen, we did not know that this Minnesota team could get to a conference finals because we didn't think that maybe the fit wasn't working with Randall when you added him with Gobert. Randall has been, certainly Edwards is their best player, but he's been at least their second best player, and it hasn't been close down the stretch and in the playoffs. And he has played extremely, extremely well. It's a deep team. When you have DiVincenzo, Alexander Walker, and Naz Reid coming off your bench, it gives you a lot of interchangeable parts as far as what they're able to do. We saw it in the Golden State series. We saw it in the Lakers series. They become a little too heavy reliant, certainly shooting three. I would love to see him just, when Ant's going downhill and attacking the basket, he's dangerous because he can do so many different things. He can get to the basket or maybe become a facilitator. I do think they do get themselves in a little bit of trouble when they are so reliant on shooting from deep. It's going to be a great series. It really is. OKC comes at you in waves, right? Like they basically, it was 24-10 yesterday down. And normally you'd be like, oh boy, this team is going to be in trouble. It's game 7 at home. They're tight, but they basically come, and I know Denver was certainly nicked up. They come at you with waves. Wallace for Dort, right? They can go double bigs. Caruso, they can put on basically any of the 5 players here. So it is going to be both series are going to be really, I think, really, really competitive. A couple different, contrast styles. I think it's great for the league where we are parity-wise. That one of these teams will win a championship, some for the first time, another for the first time in 50-plus years.
Bobby, last thing that will set you loose. I started out the show with this, and I want you to kind of expand on it and help us understand where we're at in pro basketball from a macro viewpoint of an era of great parity where markets such as ours have been able to roster construct elsewhere to win championships. And the CBA, I believe, expires in 2030, which gives it's another 5-year window with this landscape for teams that operate in cities like ours that have been able to do really great things. How does the current landscape benefit a team that plays in Salt Lake, and do you think the Jazz can capitalize on it before the NBA decides to maybe pivot in 2030?
I think how it helps Utah and other cities is that there's 3 elements as far as roster building. There's the draft, there is the trade market, and then there's free agency. And under the CBA, free agency is a distant third. It's probably, we wouldn't maybe even put it in there because it's really non-existent. And I think that helps. I think that helps some of these markets that aren't Los Angeles or New York or Miami or other San Francisco with Golden State here. That if you draft, you develop, and you retain, you're going to have a chance. The hard part is you got to draft well, right? Like you got to hit on your picks and stuff like that, and draft players. And then because then it gives you the functionality to go out and add a player or two, like Indiana was able to do, right? Indiana is, I know they swapped Haliburton for or Sabonis for Haliburton, but then they were able to go out and draft Mathurin, and they got and trade for Nesmith, and they traded for Siakam, and they're still in a really good position here. So the drafting and developing sets up for when that player becomes available, and it's just a matter of you going out and doing it. But I do think it eliminates, for most part, free agency and all these teams gobbling up these superstars and stuff, and it gives you the ability to extend with your own team and stay with your own team for the long haul and stuff like that. So I do think there's some I think there's a lot of advantages there too, but it's more of that. Now you have to capitalize on that.
Well, Bobby, I appreciate the time. It's been such a fun playoff. Excited for the conference finals, and let's get you back on soon. Thank you, sir.
Sounds good. Good talking with you.
All right. The great Bobby Marks, ESPN front office insider, spent a number of years with the New Jersey Nets. That's right, kids. Look it up. Does a great job of kind of helping us understand the landscape of the league. At Bobby Marks 42 is where you find him on social. Brought to you today by our friends at IFA Country Stores. When the seasons change, if you're like any good coach, you'll put together your game plan for a healthy green lawn. And you'll turn to the experts at IFA. Check out their 4+ lawn care program. Everything you need to make your yard a hit. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move at IFA and IFA.coop. Got some breaking news concerning a local player in the world of pro football getting paid. We'll tell you who that is coming up on the other side. We got Tom Haberstroh, Tony Parks, and Easton Folster. Busy Monday show. Good to have you with us right here on The Drive with Spence Checketts on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. No NBA basketball tonight. I don't even know what I'm going to do. Conference finals start tomorrow, and they continue on Wednesday. Happy Monday to our guy, Tom Haberstroh, who joins now to talk some ball. Tommy, what's going on, man? Hello, Tom. Tom Haberstroh. Hello? All right.
I'm here. I had myself on mute. It was a rookie move. I had myself on mute, and I was talking, and you were like, hey, can I hear you? And I was like, is my take that the Last of Us episode that I watched that I can't watch tonight? Do you have any Last of Us takes? Are you watching that show?
I am not. Have you made your way through Righteous Gemstones?
So that's on my to-do list this off season.
Okay.
I know. Just don't. I know it. Okay. Everybody, all my buddies I can't believe. Because, like, if you did an algorithm of, like, things that I like, comedies, shows, HBO shows, whatever, it would all point to the Righteous Gemstones. And I haven't started it yet. And I'm sorry. I apologize. That is number one on my big board.
You do not have to apologize to me, but you can count me among the people. We're not best buds, but it does seem like Righteous Gemstones would be right down your alley. I mean, like anything McBride does, I'll give it a chance. You know, vice principals, whatever it is. I'm going to watch Danny McBride.
Well, I think right now the NBA, it's a great time to be an NBA fan because we've got some new fresh blood. We've got the whole Cooper Flag dynamic. There's a lot of storylines with the Luka Doncic stuff. We've got some new blood. But I got to say, at this point in the postseason, I think everyone deserves a little bit of a beat, a little bit of a break. And so last night having no game and then tonight not having a game, I think it's good for all. I'm not saying it's Aaron Gordon where Aaron Gordon is now after losing, saying we need more rest in the postseason. I'm not saying I'm taking a page out of Aaron Gordon's book. I'm just saying, look, I think for everyone's health and their families and their loved ones, it'll be good to get some FaceTime with them this evening. I'm just saying that.
What if you're single and your only child is 23 living in New Canaan, Connecticut and not in Salt Lake? What if you have literally nothing to do and no family to interface with?
You're asking for a friend there?
Yeah, not me, Tom. Just a buddy of mine.
Well, you know what? You can pull up some old clips, you know? You can pull up whatever you want. And that's the great thing about the NBA is there's plenty of libraries there on NBA.com, or if you want, on all the streaming platforms. There's lots of content you can watch on the NBA if you need to fill that void in your life.
Or could you do me a favor and go to the archive of the Staples Records and see if you can give me 1994 New Canaan at Staples, Spence Checketts versus Pete Van Sicklen. Can you do that?
What is the website? Error message 404 not found. That's what that is. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, fair enough. All right, Tom, I've got kind of a loaded question, but you'll be good with this. I started the show off today with, we're about to have our 7th NBA champ in 7 years. When you look at some of the teams that have won championships, it's Milwaukee, it is Denver, and ultimately this year we have Minnesota, we have Oklahoma City, we have Indianapolis, all in the Final Four. Which means this era of parity should benefit teams that play in cities such as ours. Now, the problem is the Jazz are not ready to capitalize on what other teams have been able to position themselves to capitalize on. The new CBA expires in 5 years. We had Bobby Marks on last segment. We kind of walked through this. So explain to us why we have seen this parity manifest itself in pro basketball and how the Jazz can position themselves to capitalize on this era the way that other small market teams have.
Here's how you do it. You build up your medical staff. There's no cap on your medical staff, and this parity era is lipstick on a pig. The parity label is a nice, warm propaganda term to say all our stars are injured these days, and that's what's dictating these non-repeats and new champions every year. Because guys like Jason Tatum, or if it's Giannis, or if it's Kevin Durant in the 2019 NBA Finals, or if it's Klay Thompson in the 2019 NBA Finals, if it's Chris Middleton with the Milwaukee Bucks, if it's Drew Holiday this year and Jason Tatum, these repeat quests are more a result of stars getting injured than I think what's being led on. And we can say this is the era of, the CBA, the second apron, and the Big Three era is done. I would argue that this is more of a function of NBA stars are getting hurt and not on our TV screens than it is more of this like good competitive balance measures. And I think that's not a fun story to tell. It's an important story to tell. It's an accurate story to tell that the repeat champions, or the reigning champions, I should say, in that 7 years are more injury-riddled than not. So when we look at the Boston Celtics and why they fell in that series, there's two reasons. One, they got really cold shooting, and two, they had no Jason Tatum, a banged-up Drew Holiday who was missing playoff games earlier in the series, in the playoffs. You had also Kristaps Porzingis, who was a shell of himself, right? The Knicks were healthy. They played great. But the Boston Celtics are not repeat champions mostly because of the fact that they didn't shoot well and that they weren't healthy. And that really is the big story here, is when you're talking about parity in the NBA, it's not a thing of competitive balance no matter what they sell you. It's more about three-point shooting has taken over the league, and because of that, there's more variance in who wins in a series. And if you look at every series this postseason, almost all of them have been won by the team that shot better from downtown. Almost every single one. And so when you have the three ball mattering this much and injuries mattering this much in the postseason, I just wrote a column for Yahoo Sports that injuries in the postseason have increased sevenfold since the late 1990s. Injuries to star players, all-star players, have increased sevenfold since the late 1990s and fivefold since as recently as 2008. So that is why we're not having these repeat champions. As much as we want to say it's about, everyone's got a chance. Well, everyone's got a chance because stars that matter more in basketball than any other sport, star players are not being available because of injuries and three-point shooting. And so I think that's more of a reason. And if you're a Utah Jazz fan, I would say make sure your training staff is as good as the New York Knicks' one, because they just got the Trainers Award this year. The Trainers Association, the Athletic Trainers Association, give out the Athletic Training Association Award, and going to the healthiest or the best training staff in the league, and it just got awarded to the Knicks today. And they got Casey Smith from the Dallas Mavericks, which is one of the reasons why allegedly Luka Doncic was moved at the deadline, was because Casey Smith, who was one of the best and most well-regarded training staff, head athletic trainers in the NBA, that was as close to Dirk Nowitzki as anybody, who was a part of the staff when they won the 2011 NBA Finals against the Miami Heat. That guy just got the award for the New York Knicks. And I think that this is an important storyline for the franchises that are in Charlotte, where I'm based, and in Utah, and in Memphis, and New Orleans. You got to ramp up your medical staffs, because that is the most important ingredient when it comes to winning championships, is not just having stars. Yes, we all know that. But making sure those stars are healthy and well supported by your performance and medical staff, that's going to dictate as much as getting the star is making sure that they're able to play in June, in May, and in April. And that is a big storyline that no one's talking about.
Well, Tom, I didn't invite you on to completely sabotage my rundown of the show today. Okay, so and you're not necessarily wrong. The problem with talking about that through the prism of where the Jazz find themselves is, all due respect to the current roster, none of them really have to stay healthy for them to do anything special. So I guess I'll try to change maybe the angle and the direction, but I do want to get back to what you just said, because I'm wondering what your thoughts are on why we're seeing this. But when it comes to the Jazz perspective, is there anything that we can ascertain from the current landscape of the NBA that is positive for this fan base to look at through the prism of what OKC has built and Minnesota has built and Indianapolis has built and Milwaukee winning a title and Denver winning a title? Is there anything about all of that that this fan base should look at as a positive piece of news for the future of this organization as they continue to try to roster construct?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's good news that we have injuries to star players, because if you don't have a great team, or if you're trying to rebuild and, hit the lottery, not necessarily the draft lottery, we don't have to revisit that from last week. But the point is, if you are a mid-tier title contender like the Indiana Pacers or the Minnesota Timberwolves that were not in my top tier all season long at TomTheFinder.com, you have a better shot in today's era when Jason Tatum and Damian Lillard tear their Achilles in the postseason. Like, you have a better chance at making a run and having things break your way if star players are getting injured more. So if the Utah Jazz want to look at this era and say, hey, it's a shorter path because of this, I would agree with you. I would also say that when you have a guy like Will Hardy who believes in three-pointers and has a shot profile of, taking your shots from smart places on the floor, rim, get to the free throw line, and three-pointers, this is the modern way to play. And you're seeing that games are being dictated by three-pointers a lot more, and he believes that. Like, Will Hardy is wise to the importance of the three-point shot. That doesn't mean that he is okay with Walker Kessler taking 10 threes a game, that we saw a little cameo of that at the end of the season, and we might know why that was happening. But I think when you look at the Utah Jazz and this more open playing, open season for the championship, it might not be as long of a runway as it was in previous generations. And the Thunder are evidence of that. And I also think that the Indiana Pacers, you remember, they were in the Wemby sweepstakes. Like, they were going to be a team that was going to tank, and they kind of were too good for that. It wasn't long ago that the Indiana Pacers were considered Vegas's the lowest number in the over-unders by Vegas. It was only a couple years ago. And so now they are one of the last four teams remaining for a second straight year. And I think there's a good lesson there for Utah Jazz that this can turn around quickly.
So we talked to you, I think, our first NBA guest after the bad news that the Jazz did not get a little luck last week. And I keep hesitating to say they fell to 5 because the percentages said that was the best possible, or not the best, the most likely possible outcome was 4 or 5. So that was their floor. So they didn't get the luck, but they actually landed where the numbers said they probably would land. Here's my question, Tom, because we've already seen a couple reports, one from our local beat writer here, the Deseret News, Sarah Todd, indicating the Jazz are going to do whatever they can to try to move up, and they're going to try to be bold. They've got all the assets. We'll see how that looks or what it looks like, but who in the top 5? We can remove Dallas because Patrick Dumont was like, we're keeping one. We're drafting Cooper Flagg. No, Nico, you can't trade it. So that's already kind of done. So if we move Dallas, who in front of the Jazz is most likely to move up, and you think the Jazz can get something like that done?
I'm looking at San Antonio. San Antonio at number 2, they already have De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle. And Dylan Harper is considered the favorite to go number 2 before the draft lottery, and we'll see what happens and if the San Antonio Spurs move down, right? Would they want someone on the Utah Jazz roster right now to trade down from 2 to 5? And would they be willing to part with, let's say, Lauri Markkanen or John Collins or another veteran that would be appealing to a team that's trying to win? As we saw with the De'Aaron Fox acquisition, they're trying to win now. And if it's going to be Lauri Markkanen on the table for Dylan Harper, I don't know. I think the Utah Jazz would be very wise to try to go get a Dylan Harper, but if it comes at the cost of Markkanen, I can understand why he would be very appealing to the Spurs and why Dylan Harper would be very appealing to the Utah Jazz to get like their point guard, whether you want to say hybrid guard of the future. That would make sense from a personnel standpoint. I just don't know if the Utah Jazz would move Markkanen for Dylan Harper. I don't know if he's that much of a knockdown or a home run draft prospect. But in terms of the needs of the San Antonio Spurs as getting a knockdown three-point shooter, a big like Harrison Barnes is like a poor man's version of Lauri Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen is a star version of Harrison Barnes, a big guard who can shoot the rock and play multiple positions. When you got like Lauri Markkanen and Victor Wembanyama next to each other, that's really impressive. That's a really tough to guard front line. They're big, and you don't need as much shot blocking if you're Lauri Markkanen when you got Wemby right there behind you. He's like a souped-up version of Walker Kessler back there. So I would ask for more if I'm the Utah Jazz, if I'm going to move Lauri Markkanen. But that seems like two teams that are on different trajectories, and you could imagine them trying to move up. But I can't imagine the San Antonio Spurs are going to move down for John Collins or something like that. So it would be tough for me to see the San Antonio Spurs unless Lauri Markkanen is on the table.
All right. Moving over now to teams that are still playing. And I wonder, and I talked to Bobby about this, and you'll get it. Visions of Charles Smith missing 4 layups in a row. No, he was not fouled. Visions of Anthony Mason literally throwing an inbounds pass to Reggie Miller, who stepped back and hit a 3 when Greg Anthony fell down. Visions of Patrick Ewing's finger roll bouncing off the back of the rim against the Pacers. John Starks going 3 of 18, and Pat Riley refusing to just take Rolando Blackman off ice for a minute. All of those things dancing through my Knick fan head. So no part of me thought we were going to see a blowout on Friday night, yet we did. What stands out most, Tom, outside of the Tatum stuff, which we know has to be brought into the equation, but the way the Knicks have been able to do this and build this roster that brings them back to the conference finals, what stands out most to you?
I mean, it's Jalen Brunson. This guy is unreal. The way that he has dominated in fourth quarters this postseason and in clutch time, it's remarkable. It's a testament to Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau and Worldwide West and the fact that they believe so much in Jalen Brunson to tamper, whatever you want to call it, hire his father to the coaching staff under Tom Thibodeau and send a whole fleet of people to go watch that game that they thought it was about Donovan Mitchell when it's more about Jalen Brunson. To go and acquire that guy and then say, not only is he going to be an all-star for us, but he's going to be one of the best, if not the best playoff performer in a couple years, because that's the level that Jalen Brunson has been playing this postseason, averaging 29 points per game. And in the fourth quarters this postseason, Jalen Brunson has over 100 points. He has 114 points this postseason. And the next highest guy has 76. Oof. So Jalen Brunson in the fourth quarter shooting 51% from the floor, 48% from downtown, and has more points than anybody by about 40 points. That's insane. And he's not a big dude. And so I can understand why people looked at Jalen Brunson and said he's undersized, he's not athletic enough, but the dude's a winner. And he's proven time and time again that he's been able to step up. And last postseason against the Indiana Pacers, getting hurt and just not being able to finish the season, I can't wait for this series. I can't wait to see how Karl Anthony Towns is leveraged in this series. We got 2 5-out teams with Miles Turner and Karl Anthony Towns being 2 of the best three-point shooting bigs in the league. We've got a lot of bad blood between these two teams historically. We're going to see Reggie Miller on the mic for TNT in their last postseason on the broadcast. There's a lot of dynamics here that are really exciting, but my favorite thing is that we have the potential for Tyrese Halliburton to do the choke sign against the New York Knicks a la Reggie Miller, with Reggie Miller in the building in Indiana. Like, if that happens, WWE ain't got nothing on this series. We even saw Tyrese Halliburton and Jalen Brunson in WWE, and it wouldn't top the theatrics if the Indiana Pacers win a clutch game in Indiana against the New York Knicks, and with Reggie Miller on the broadcast, Tyrese Halliburton busts that out. Like I am here for this series.
You know what PTSD is, Tom? You know the definition of that?
Right there. I'm sorry.
Okay, so like of all the interviews you're going to do this week, this is the only one you didn't need to do that. You realize that, right?
I am sorry to do that to you.
All good.
At first, I start off by having the mute button on, and then I do that to you. Come on, man. If you hung up on me, I would not blame you.
I would never do that to you, especially at my age when my son is visibly embarrassed watching me text. He's like, Dad, why does that take you so long? I'm like, just leave me alone. I'll get it done. Just real quick, who do you give the advantage to? Knicks Pacers, just early on.
I think it's the Pacers and the way that they get up and down the floor. The shot making that they have. They are the best shooting team in the postseason so far. They've got about 8 guys in that series shooting 50% or higher against Cleveland. They are a team that I think could give the Knicks real problems when it comes to that up tempo. They move the ball crazy. Way more than the Boston Celtics. The Indiana Pacers are averaging more passes per game this postseason than any team since 2015. It's been a decade plus since we've seen a team move the ball this much per game than the Indiana Pacers. And as we saw against the Boston Celtics, the switching that they do, sometimes they can get vulnerable. They're going to try to limit the passing by switching a lot, but they're not a good switching team. And so are you going to see Tom Thibodeau in that very overload, strong side defense, and the Pacers are going to try to pick that apart by getting them in rotation and getting open baskets. This is a really good Pacers offense and a team that has the best win percentage in the Eastern Conference since January 1. They're legit. It's not going to be an easy series. I picked the Boston Celtics over the Knicks in 5 games, so I'm obviously underrating the New York Knicks historically. But I just think the Indiana Pacers play a brand of basketball that can be really tough for the Knicks. So I got the Pacers in that series.
Out this way, OKC dispatches of Denver in Game 7. And, man, when they turn it on, it just – and look, there might be a little pressure on OKC with Boston out, with Cleveland out, with LeBron out, with Stephen Curry out. And I could keep going. They are the Vegas favorite to win, not just against the T-Wolves, but the NBA championship. Now – Minnesota, I think they deserve a lot more credit than most people are giving them, and maybe we should have paid more attention to them because they did finish the season well. But before I say you lose, who do you like out this way in the West, OKC or Minnesota, and why?
I think it's OKC, and their defense is so smothering and so physical and so intense that I could see it giving Rudy Gobert a lot of problems. I see Julius Randle has been as good as I've ever seen Julius Randle play in this postseason. But the way that they kind of bait you into trying to go one-on-one, and then they have like 3 guys swarming you and swiping at the ball, I could see that going very sideways for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Look, this Golden State Warriors team was cooked without Stephen Curry. Jimmy Butler was injured, could not muster up enough to lead that team with any sort of fight against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I think this Thunder team is way different. They're way younger, youngest title contending team ever. Alex Caruso, the fact that they were able to get him in the trade for Josh Giddey and then turn him into a Jokic stopper, that was insane. And I got OKC. I've had OKC all season long. I've been on this program saying that I think they're going to run through the postseason. Denver did a great job giving them a real battle in that semifinals. I think it's over in 6 games against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I understand why Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves on rest would seem to be a popular pick, but I got OKC in that series. But I want to hand it to Julius Randle. He's proven me wrong this postseason. I did not think he was going to be a good postseason performer. And watching the Knicks as much as you do, that he can be very frustrating. And the way that he, plays iso ball and just puts the blinders on and attacks you. But in some of those series, man, against the Lakers, and the way that they were trying to go small against the Timberwolves, like sometimes you need that bully ball. Sometimes you need that against the Golden State Warriors that are basically playing 5 guards out there. Julius Randle has been excellent this postseason, but I think against this huge intense, physical Thunder team, I think it's just going to be too much of a test for the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I got OKC in 6.
One more thing, actually, I want to kick the tires real quick because you referenced the Knicks trainer, being awarded the training staff of the year. I would just wonder if you're watching the same way I am. Like, I get Tom Thibodeau's ethos. Like, known him forever. He was Jeff's assistant. But when it's 110-74 with 5 minutes left and Jalen Brunson is fighting over Xavier Tillman picks, at what point do you put aside who you are and sit your guys to make sure they're ready for the next round?
Man, does a tiger change its stripes?
I know.
I mean,
I know.
We've seen it. Unfortunately, we've seen this horror show, the boogeyman. What happens at the end of these runs? It happened last year. I don't want to rain on their parade. Like, absolutely, they should celebrate. Since 2000, haven't made the conference finals. An incredible performance against the Boston Celtics. But that stuff makes me nervous, man. It does. And, with Jalen Brunson being banged up this postseason or at the end of the regular season, that ankle, it just takes one weird freak play for that ankle to be rolled. And then it's the Tom Thibodeau story all over again. But, man, they're playing so well. Mitchell Robinson coming back from injury, the way that he's performed. It's a 7-man rotation, and let's see what happens against the Indiana Pacers that are going to try to run them out of the gym. It's going to be a really, really fun series. I can't wait.
Where can people go get the word, Tommy?
TomTheFinder.com, Yahoo Sports, the big number that I do with Dan Devine, as well as the KOC show that I appear every week. We're going to do a post-game show Thursday night after Minnesota OKC. On Thursday night, we're going to do a live show over at Yahoo Sports, so go check me out there. And, of course, pack your knives. Top Chef recap show in full season right now if you're a Top Chef fan. Thanks so much, Spence.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon. There's the great Tom Haberstroh, brought to you today by IFA Country Stores. Summer vacation and warmer weather are just beyond the horizon. As the days grow longer, and brightly colored flowers making their appearance, it's time to start planning and applying step 2 of IFA's 4+ annual lawn care program, designed with a blend of vital macro and micronutrients. IFA Step 2 fertilizer promotes strong roots and vibrant colors in your yard at IFA and IFA.coop. Our next guest made an appearance on SportsCenter's Top 10 Plays last night. He didn't make the play, but he called the play. Tony Parks will join us live in studio. Easton Folster later on. We got a lot to do on this Monday edition of the program. So don't go anywhere. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Shout out Weezer in town over the weekend. Attended Kilby Court with a bunch of children that were my son's age and younger. But showed up early, didn't make the Friday night tilt, which apparently was the best night. But Saturday, show up at about 4:35, hanging out with the youngs. And then Weezer plays, and the other old showed up. So that was nice. You typically will attend a Kilby block party from time to time. Were you present at all?
I was lucky enough this year. I heard it from home.
Oh, you live close enough that you didn't have to.
I heard that concert while I was doing my garden last night, so it was actually kind of nice.
And also, Travis Tritt wasn't there.
Yeah, Travis Tritt.
Is he alive?
I think so.
Shout out Travis Tritt. On a Monday afternoon. Tony Parks.
What's up, man?
I'll tell you what. I finish my Sunday nights the same way all the time. I usually prefer to spend it with Scott Van Pelt. Not literally, that'd be weird. But hopefully it's Van Pelt Sports Center. And last night, hanging out, about to fall asleep, and they say, top 10 plays. I'm like, hey, I'll check out the top 10 plays. Who doesn't love the top 10 plays?
I love them.
And then prior to number one, they said, let's go to minor league baseball. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if the Bees are involved. Sure enough, I hear your voice in the background, and the number one play on SC Top 10 was a Bees player making a great catch in the outfield, yes?
It's awesome. Nico Cavadas robs a home run. Nico gets traded to this team last year, middle of the year. Red Sox trade him. Him, Matthew Lugo, who's now with the Angels. Nico comes, and he's a part of the team. South Bend, Indiana kid. Grew up dreaming of going to Notre Dame. Went to games, baseball, football, watched Jeff Samardzija, the whole thing. Has stories galore. Yeah.
Good call.
He dated a girl who lived in the central time zone. He lived in the eastern, which was 10 minutes apart because they're right by the border.
Right there, yep.
Yeah, so he has stories that are just endless and are funny. And the cool thing with him is I joke with him, well, your timing is so great because you were always on time on accident because you would gain an hour. And he would be like, no, I'd show up an hour early for stuff. It was annoying, right? So when he's at Notre Dame, a coach named Link Jarrett comes along. They're one of the worst defensive teams. Flips them around to being one of the best defensive teams. And he becomes a very underrated, in my opinion, defensive player. First base mostly, here and there. But then they put him in the outfield, and I'm like, you know what? This guy could play some outfield. This guy, and you're watching it in workouts and all of that. You're going, this dude's, I don't think people would look at him and think, oh, this is going to be a dynamic outfield player, a player in the outfield. And sure enough, yesterday, he's out in right. I think that's his first game in right this year. He's played mostly left.
Okay.
Mostly left. I have to go back and look at it. Some of the games kind of blur together.
Sure they do.
But as it's going back, I'm like, okay, yeah, I think that's going to get out. And then as I'm watching him time the leap, I'm going, oh, my gosh. And then you see his athleticism, his ability to reach over. He couldn't have been more perfect with the timing. It was awesome, man. It was a great way. They lost yesterday. They didn't lost like 7-1, but that was like a stellar highlight, one of many great defensive highlights for the team. But that was so cool to call, to watch, and then to know his background, which led up to that moment.
How if at all, how does that work? Like, do you guys get a call from ESPN like, hey, we want to use this clip? I mean, are you aware that you're about to be calling the top play on SportsCenter that night, or do you learn it in real time like the rest of us?
I didn't know it would be number one. I thought, oh, that's got to be a candidate for sure. And what you do is in your tweets and all of the communication, you hashtag SC Top 10 and SportsCenter and all that. And so, and I immediately, because the feed, here's what would happen. This year, I started saying, hey, look, when we get a really dynamic call, let's have a communication situation where we can get our call over the MILB call because they always take the home feed, because that would just normally be on the home feed and that's it.
Sure, yeah.
I was like, no, let's get our call for big home runs and big things like that. And so that was a gimme. We had a good system, and it got processed right away and then communicated to SportsCenter right away. And it just increases your chances for something like that, to give love to Cavadas, to the Bees, and our whole organization. So it was cool.
John Oliver, excuse me, not John Hollinger. He writes for The Athletic. John Oliver hosts this show called Last Week Tonight on HBO. It airs every Sunday. And John's a really funny, it's a lot of satire. It's a lot of political satire. But he did, last night, he did an entire segment on minor league baseball. And he had prior to a couple of shows ago, because he went to, who's this super popular minor league baseball team that everybody
Trash Pandas, Rocket City, and there are
is
double
that
A
who it is?
affiliate.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. He went to a game or something. He was like, "This is awesome. More people should go to minor league baseball games." So he offered on his show to rebrand an entire minor league baseball team. He's going to rename it. He's going to give it a theme night, and they're going to create a mascot. And so last night, I think they landed on the Erie, Pennsylvania baseball team that they're going to rebrand entirely. But he did this, and it was actually kind of cool. I didn't realize he was going to do this. He kind of made this plea like, if you live in a city with minor league baseball, go support these teams.
For sure.
Because they've done all of this research, and as a result of the research, they were going to games, they were talking to front offices, they were talking to fans, and it was kind of like this last bastion of sport that isn't overly tainted with economic infusion and capitalist undertones. It's just like a pure way to go enjoy a baseball game.
100%.
I thought it was kind of cool.
No.
Like, and obviously that reverberates with you.
Yeah, it really, really does. That's why I think so many people who work in the Pacific Coast League, Steve and I were obviously close, Steve Klauke and I, so many of us that work there, that's why it's a clubhouse feel. Because it doesn't have some of those undertones you're talking about. You deal with far less of the unnecessary BS. There's always weird stuff you got to deal with, but like you get to really connect with people in a great way. And the fans, too. And the whole thing. And the fans love the players because we know with the way it works, the chances of them being there next year are next to none because they're going to go to a different team or go to the major leagues or go somewhere else. Like it's just you shuffle the deck every year and the roster changes so much year to year. So when they get a moment with a player, they love it. And then on top of that, the ballpark becomes important. The mascot, the trends, the traditions, the things like that make it great. Baseball's already great like that. But when you mix it in with something beautiful, like what we had at 1300 South and West Temple, and now what we have in Daybreak, like you can't beat it because it's so special to be around. So special. I've worked in the NBA, TV, radio, MC, PA. I've done all the different arts and worked in different leagues. There's nothing like the feel of minor league baseball.
Tell me, and I don't have any data at my disposal with this. My sincere hope is that the Millers' endeavor to bring Major League Baseball here comes to fruition. I just think it would be so great. And obviously, through my prism, last night after getting through, the NBA stuff, I watched Game 7 on the NHL side and then some of the Scheffler highlights. I throw on Mets Yankees Subway Series. My guy Bellinger goes deep.
Yeah,
grand slam.
The ultimate Yankee Stadium wall scraper.
And I just give me the lefty that can hit it, just right out there. Just give me the lefty that can hit it 250 feet. And we're good. But I love that the Mets are good right now because Porter's going to be like, hey, we have a chance, and then they don't because they're the Mets. But I haven't watched a lot of baseball yet this year. I've been NBA playoff centric or whatever. But every time I tune into a game and really give it my attention, because it isn't a sport that's designed for the 24/7 house of highlights like you have. If you're going to watch a baseball game, it requires some focus and some attention.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a different, it's a different time in our society because we all have computers in our hand and our attention spans are like this. And I notice it with myself. Like even if I'm watching a movie, I'm like, wait, this is 2 hours long? I'm just going to go watch a show that's 30 minutes. Like, our attention spans are shorter, and I don't know what that's done for the bottom line of interest for Major League Baseball. But do you have any insight as to the health of the sport right now? Not just the game, that's a great game, but just the health of Major League Baseball nationwide?
Yeah. I mean, I think you look at how you would compare it to other stuff like the NFL. Clearly, it's going to take a back seat. I mean, it has so many games, and when you talk about being there in person, it's a great experience. TV and radio is obviously different. It's one of those that you have on the background for radio if you want. I've always loved when I'll prep for a game. If there's day games on, I love my Wednesday, Thursday games. Mm-hmm. I'll have it on in the background, like listening to different broadcasters, just hearing the sounds of it. It's just nice. It's nice to have. When it comes to something that you are going to attach yourself to, you're not attaching yourself to it going, okay, they can get out of the sixth inning, we get to the bullpen, and no, that's for the playoffs. It's just because there's so many games that the attention span is not going to be there all the time. So it's something to have on. Something to have on like on a Sunday night, like you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. And so the eat, sleep, breathe, every live moment in terms of TV, radio, I think that would be tough to ever compare it to stuff like it has with the NFL and things like that. But it is healthy. there is attraction to the stars of the game right now. There is attraction to the fact that they improved the timing of the game with the clock rules now, and you can't throw over the first 150 times. And like now the game moves a lot better, and it's actually more enjoyable as a broadcaster. There's some tempo now to the game and some feel, which is great.
You've noticed that.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's glaring, and I love it. I love it a lot. So there's good to that, but I do think it's healthy overall, and I think obviously the revenues look terrific in terms of the engagement and the attention to the game. But you just know that it's not to the level of something like the National Football League and some other major sport. I mean, it's just not.
And it doesn't have to be.
And it doesn't have to.
You know, and on the landscape of the hierarchy, it's probably still three, right? It's probably football, basketball, then baseball. Maybe hockey's gaining some inroads, and soccer will probably always be on the outside looking in this country. That's kind of where I've landed on it. Let me ask you this, even though I've asked you this before. As somebody who calls all these Bees games, has worked for the Millers, and understands the sport and understands our market, are you confident that we'll support a Major League Baseball team? Should we get it?
Yeah, I am. No, very confident, because the same reason why they supported the NHL. And the same exact reason, because I had a good friend of mine who's one in Chicago and then another one lives in Long Island, and he was like, "It's not. I've been out there. It doesn't really feel like a hockey city." I said, "It's not. I'm not going to lie to you and be like, this is a hockey town." No, it's not. It's not. People were learning the game as the season went along. By the way, it doesn't make them less of a fan, doesn't make them not intelligent. Yeah. It's just this is not a place where kids played a lot of hockey. We can just call it like it is. But they supported it because it was their team. They love events, and they are totally engaged with this community. So I knew the moment the NHL came in, I was like, oh, yeah, they'll totally get behind that team. And then, as it turned out, they did. And I thought it was great with the way that people were able to just say, like, oh, okay, I'm learning about this part of the game. And, you know, Nat was never a hockey fan. Taught her offsides, icing, in. Just like that. Loved it. Big Blackhawks fan. Went to more Blackhawks games than any other team in the city. It was awesome. But for a lot of people here, that can be the same thing. And it's another great, enjoyable experience. Here's the other thing. It would own the summer. It would absolutely own the summer. So would it sell out every game like you would, say, the NHL? Well, no, you have 81 games.
Nobody sells out every
Major League Baseball game. Like I love it when people are like, I could see them having a tough time selling out every game.
Nobody does.
Well, yes, and nobody does. And so you get 2 months of dicey weather. You've got a lot of games. But I do think you would see a ton of great energy and passion towards it, like you were seeing energy and passion towards now the Utah Mammoth. So
and summer nights here rule. I mean,
they're amazing.
You know, like that's one of the things I love about the soccer experience. And I tease those guys over there because they're always like, "Hey, you coming to the game?" I'm like, "Is it 75 degrees yet?" Because I'm not coming until it's warm. Because I'm not sitting outside in cold weather. But a warm Utah summer night out at America First Field, even if you're not a soccer fan, you will enjoy the experience. And you don't have to be a baseball fan to go sit outside. You talked about the sunsets at the new ballpark last time. Grab a hot dog and a pop, whatever your thing is, and just enjoy the experience. One more thing here, and then we'll talk about what you guys have coming up. So Rob Manfred has said we are not expanding until the new CBA expires. The good news is that's next year.
Yes.
So December 1st, 2026, the new CBA in Major League Baseball expires. And then we'll see what they do as far as expansion on the horizon. We know the cities, Nashville, Portland, the usual suspects. There's always the possibility of the Arizona Coyotes being owned by an idiot and needing a new home, and suddenly Salt Lake has hockey. There's the Tampa Bay stuff that's out there. The A's look like they're going to Vegas, although that's not done. What's your understanding about where we're at in the process of getting baseball here to our market?
Yeah, I'm not being a homer with this. Leader in the clubhouse. Leader in the clubhouse. And by the way, there's a ton of variables that come with stuff like this over time, so things can always change. But I think they're the leader in the clubhouse because all the circus, all the nonsense is out of the way. If you're going to expand, it is the place because you have the ownership, you have alignment with where they're going to have the stadium, all of the details on how they're going to fund it, all the nonsense, all the headaches, all the 47 chain emails and the hour-and-a-half-long meetings.
Bureaucracy.
Oh, my gosh, the last minute, oh, crap, hey, by the ways, all that stuff, gone. And there is something, too, having already put so many other plans in place to then let this be a smooth landing. As smooth as you can have it, I would say.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I try to tell people, too, is because they go, well, how long do you think it would take? I'm like, well, you got to remember, when Tampa and Arizona had their expansion teams, it was 4 years later they had opening day.
4
so
years?
When
Okay.
it was like, if I remember right, it was announced. It was like 4 years later.
Yeah.
That's a gap. So it would have to be, hey, we're expanding. Hey, this is where we're doing it. I don't know if it would be 4 years, but that's what it was back then. So that takes some time. The other thing is if you expand, so people look at what happened with Ryan Smith and the Utah Mammoth now, great work to quickly turn it around. I mean, amazing. Like, they deserve a ton of credit for that. It was also easier that it was a purchased team.
Right.
Because now everything's in place.
Team, yeah.
It's not straight turnkey, but a lot of things are done. In this situation, where are your minor league affiliates? Where's your spring training facility? The stadium, obviously. There's a ton of things that all come into play with an expansion team. So,
all right, Tom, before we catch a break, the Salt Lake Bees and Miller Sports and Entertainment invite all to celebrate the grand opening of the Salt Lake Bees team store, the ballpark at America First Square. This is tomorrow, May the 20th, 1111 South Ballpark Drive. First of all, great address, easy to find.
it's my mom's passcode for her phone, so she can't forget, where to.
I probably should not say my father's cell phone on air, but it is amazingly easy. New merch, great deals, and more. BeesTeamStore.com. Tony, what do you want our listeners to know?
Oh, man, I tell you what, I love with what they're going to have with this new team store. Obviously, the new gear and all of that, but the varieties of the new gear. A ton of different stuff from great women's apparel. You're going to love it for, I'm wearing this polo, and this is with the old gear. I have a new one as well. But then all the different hats. That's what I like, too. So I don't know about you. I was never a flat bill guy. I just didn't look good in a flat bill hat. I looked like a train conductor. I didn't look like a cool train conductor. I looked like a weirdo train conductor.
So I think there's a natural expiration date. Like, I was a flat brim guy when I was younger.
Okay.
But whenever I see any dude that's over 35, like wearing a flat brim hat, I'm like, bro, give it up. Like, it's not a good look.
I don't have a problem with it. It's just that I
have a problem with it.
I don't look good in it.
Yeah.
I just don't look good.
You want to know why?
I like a nice
You have a smaller face.
Yes.
You need a big jawline to look good in a flat brim.
Yeah. Apparently, you got to have a big fat face or something to make it
And you need
look...
to be younger than 35.
All I know is every time I put one on, I was like, this just does not look good.
Yeah.
So, nice curve bill hat. I like the 47 series, all that stuff. They have it. It looks great. So I always say it. If you need it, they've got it. If you don't need it, they've got it. So go get it.
There you go.
The Bees Team Store.
Come on out tomorrow. Grand opening of the Bees Team Store at the new ballpark at America First Square. All right, Tony stops by today, courtesy of our friends at Cortland Roofing. They're re-roofing and roof repair experts with over 20 years of experience. They're family-owned and operated. Call Cortland Roofing today. They've got this great offer. So if you feel like you're in the market now for a roof replacement, give them a call right away. But if you're approaching it, the deal they have for you is they're giving you free rain gutters with every roof replacement. They show me the numbers. That's literally like $2,000 of savings. So if you've been waiting, if your wife's kind of getting mad at you, we need a new roof, you might as well do it now and get the free rain gutters because you're going to save about $2,000. Give them a call at 801-615-5560. That's 801-615-5560. 801-615-5560 or online at cortlandroofing.com. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Tony last joined us on Monday of last week when we talked about the draft lottery and what could happen to the Jazz. Well, now we know. What are Tony's thoughts? We'll do that coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700.
Last night, they put together that terrific performance with 4 total strikeouts. This is launched high and deep to right by Daniel Johnson. Going back as Cavadas at the wall, leaps up, and he brought it back. He robbed it over the short sidewall, over by the right field bullpen, and he took it away. Last night, they put together that terrific performance with 4 total strikeouts. This is launched high and deep to right by Daniel Johnson. Going back as Cavadas at the wall, leaps up,
Tony
and
Parks
he brought
is
it
live
back.
in studio, good enough to join us 2 weeks in a row. Easton Folster, who's the executive director of the UGA, will join us in a little bit. Scotty Scheffler was with his third major. Easton has requested space to talk about the Knicks, because even though he's a local guy, he's a fan of the New York Knicks, but we will talk a little golf. Tony Finau finishes 19, tied for the 19 over the weekend, and takes home an extra $200K. Must be nice to finish 19th in something and make $200,000. Let's get Tony's mic on. Right?
Yeah.
That's all you got to do. Top
That's what
20,
I want to do.
Top
I want
20,
to
$200K.
be like, I'm not the best, but I'm not the worst. I made $200,000.
That's a good weekend.
That's a
for our
great
guy.
weekend.
Top 20 at a major. So, have you had a chance to meet Tony? Just the nicest kid.
Yeah, I've crossed paths with him a little bit. He and I know a lot of the same people.
Uh-huh.
Kind of crazy, yeah. But no, I've never really gotten to know him. But I know of him, and we've been around each other before. We know who each other are, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Although he'd probably be like, who?
Tony Parks? Is that the voice of the Bees? I'm sure
Is
Tony.
that the guy who did the produce race all those years?
Tony probably came out to a game or two at the ballpark,
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
He and his family.
Absolutely. But obviously, he had that great connection with Ron McBride.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just good people that know good people. And yeah. So but I've always been a huge fan of him. Always rooted him on.
Do you play golf? I don't know this about you. Do you ever play any golf? Do you watch
Not
any
great
golf?
at it. Don't watch it.
Nobody's
I just have
good at it,
so
Tony.
much. I've got so much going on. But like I track it. I keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to follow it. And then to me, it's always about the who. You and I always had such odd schedules, so we never golfed together. And even when we were at the tournaments or whatever, like we would be offset on the timing that we were on the air.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, you'd be the kind of guy. I'm not just being nice. You'd be fun to golf with, and just hang out, talk with for 18 holes, and joke about Britton Johnson for at least 3 of them.
Oh, we can do that, even if we're not playing golf. I will tell you, thank you, first of all. I think I'm a good time on the golf course.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I'm not playing well, I tend to be a little grumpy. I have changed my view. First of all, there's an economic factor that comes into play if you're breaking golf clubs left and right. So my goal this year, and I've told my buddies who I play golf with, the over-under for broken clubs is 1.5. So I'm going to give myself grace to maybe break a club. My goal is to just not break more than one. And so far, it's only May. I have not broken a golf club yet. But as I started, look, I am an aging competitor trying to understand my real lot in life. There's no reason to get competitive when you're playing Monopoly with your 8-year-old nephew. You don't need to throw the board. Okay, that's dumb. And you're out there to have fun. So I'm just trying to enjoy the journey instead of getting frustrated if I don't play well. But once I started really honing in on golf and like, this is fun. I love the challenge. And I started getting better. I bought new clubs, took some lessons. When that endeavor wouldn't pay off and I would have one of those rounds where I'm like, have you ever done this before? Clubs would fly. And I'm definitely not a good time when that happens. But I am learning, Tony. I'm trying to evolve and be better and kind of keep the tantrums to a minimum.
For me, so here's where it happens. You're not good. You go out there, hey, you're having a good time. It's all good. Then you actually start to improve.
Yes.
Then you actually see like, wait, I've straightened that out.
Yep.
Like I've kind of got that down. Then you sit there and waste 35 minutes in a conversation with a buddy talking about how you dropped one perfectly on the pool table on 6 at Nibley or whatever, whatever your story is. And then I'm going, man, that was 35 minutes I'm not getting back. And I really obsessed about that more than I should have. And then I go out there and start perceivingly regressing. And then I started feeling myself get frustrated. I was like, don't.
Not worth it.
You don't have the money to keep up with this game anyway. Like, just don't. Because I don't want to spend the money to get I just don't.
Yeah. No, and it's a big time crunch. I mean, excuse me, it's very time consuming. So it asks a lot of your time. It asks a lot of your paycheck. It's not a cheap thing to do. But yeah, as you start to get a little bit better, the other weird thing is there'll be a round where something clicks in your head, where you're like, I've got to pull down with my left. I've got to get my left hip out of the way. And then you're like, okay, I'm doing that and it's working. And then the next round you show up and you're like, okay, pull down with your left, get your left hip out of the way, get the shoulder turn, and none of that works. And you're like, okay, I've got to recalibrate and figure out what I have to do today, even though what I had to do last week, it's not working anymore.
Right.
And that, honestly, is what has addicted me to the sport.
Right.
The mental challenge. And I didn't have really a competitive outlet because I last played competitive basketball in my 20s. I broke my leg. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. So I was like looking for a competitive outlet, and that's what golf is kind of has been for me.
So here's what I love about play-by-play every day is that's what it is for me. Like I compete with myself. Like I have a vision, I have preparation, I have everything that fundamentals. I love the art of constantly and effortless with an unquenchable thirst to improve and to just minimize the distance between where I am and where I want to be more and more every day.
Love that.
To me, there is nothing like that. You wake up with that fire, you feel that fire, and then let's say you had a good day with it, like you would on the golf course. You have a good day. Cool thing is, you got another game tomorrow. Let's say, didn't go quite as well as you thought, for whatever reason, just didn't feel right, didn't deliver it right. I don't know, whatever. You know what? Got another game tomorrow. And I love that about play-by-play.
But if you mispronounce a name, you're not breaking your microphone.
No, I'm not taking off the headset.
If you miss a call, you're not breaking your equipment. What's the, this is a dangerous question.
Whatever. It's a Monday. Let's go.
I was just going to ask, have you ever witnessed a local broadcaster meltdown?
Yes.
You feel like you can share it?
No.
I didn't think so. That's why it was a dangerous question to ask.
No, it is. Try to see. The toughest one was where somebody would be upset and you could actually understand why they're upset. And then other times it was like, no, you're taking it out on this person and you're justifying your behavior. The hardest part, I think, in this industry was me saying, you've explained your behavior. Are you excusing your behavior? Well, no, but. Yeah, okay, so you are excusing your behavior. Right.
Yeah.
Because if anybody ever treated you like that, you would cry in a corner for 3 months. And okay, right. So you chose to treat them like that because they're them and you're you, and you knew these people over here don't have the courage to in any way rectify that.
I have a slight inkling that I know who you're talking about.
But just watching the defensiveness, watching the fear-based proposition. It's like, don't.
Yeah.
Like, but you know what you did. It's just because I care so much. No, that's not it.
Passion's not an excuse for poor behavior.
You're telling a truth to mask the truth. So let's talk about the truth. And that was always that was always a tough one. But there were times where people would be frustrated or mad, and they're just mad about the situation. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, no, hey, you care, you're into it, it matters to you. And in those situations, I was always like, great. You know what I mean? Like to me, like if a golfer's upset because he's mad about the situation, fine. But if somebody's competing and they're, completely a detriment to other people and things like that, and then justifying it and then couching it as, but we're still a team. And no, you're not. And you're successful in spite of that behavior, not because of that. Like
I always get a kick when I hear no, he's just overly passionate. So he's an ass. That's what you're saying. Like Draymond Green's overly passionate. Like I love Draymond as a player, but when he crosses that line, passion is not an excuse for poor behavior.
Well, it's like, okay, Michael Jordan slapped Steve Kerr, right? Guess what Michael Jordan did? Owned it. Yeah. He owned it. And Phil Jackson also, there was accountability to it. Right? So to me, you're going to have emotions boil over. The big thing is, do you take responsibility when it happens? And then you have a commitment to improved successful behavior going forward.
Right.
So everybody's always like, whenever they'll show a coach meltdown on a player and they'll be like, is this good coaching or is this abuse? I'm like, is there trust between the two? Because if there's trust between the two, now it's coaching. Because the player knows you care about them. And that's why you're also upset, because you care about them. Now there's belief here.
Yeah.
But if they don't think you care about them, then they think you're just putting on a show. Then they know that you're just acting out of line. Now what you're doing is actually a detriment to the team rather than a benefit.
Yeah.
So there you go.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
All right, Tony, when you last joined us, it was last Monday. when hope was prevalent in the market. That last Monday night, we were all going to be gathered around our televisions or our radios because we had it live on ESPN 700 to listen to Mark Tatum reveal that the Utah Jazz were going to draft number 1 overall, therefore draft Cooper Flagg, and therefore bring hope to a market and a fan base that right now, if we're honest, does not have a lot of hope. Where were you, and what was your reaction when you heard that the Utah Jazz were not drafting 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but they had, I hesitate to say, they had fallen to 5.
Right.
Now, it was their floor. They couldn't fall any further. But if you look at the numbers, they were most likely to draft 4 or 5. That's what the percentages said. Of course, the hope was 1. Where were you when you heard the news, and what was your reaction?
I was in my wife's salon. We still have a salon in our place here. And I was getting a beard trim. And I was sitting there, and
I
had my phone
Give her a
up
good tip?
on the
Okay, good.
on the ESPN 700 app. I had it sitting there. And as I was sitting there watching, the TV was on, but it's on delay and all that stuff. But anyway, as I'm sitting there and I hear on the app, the Utah Jazz, and I just went, whoa! Yeah. And I didn't say, well, because I was like, it was more that I knew the reaction of the fan base.
Knew what was coming.
Would be overwhelming.
And local media members.
Yep. I knew it would be a massive blow up. Because the Jazz in years past, let's say like the Darren Williams thing, when they fell to 6 and then they traded up.
Yeah.
But when they fell to 6, they weren't trying to get the 1. I mean, they were, they just weren't dealing with a great team. Mm-hmm. So it was like, all right, this is the one time. Oh, you fell. That's unfortunate. But they moved up to 3. They traded, whatever. In this situation, they were going all out for the whole thing. I mean, this was the objective here. And so when they went to 5th, I knew there would be a reaction of disappointment. A reaction to people being upset, where I just always shake my head and roll my eyes is this is rigged, this is fixed, this whole thing is this and that. And I thought, man, way too many years have gone by with the Knicks not being the number 1 pick. Way too many things have happened where teams who have no benefit to the league to have the number 1 pick have had the number 1 pick. I can make far more of an argument that if the league's rigging this, they're doing a really bad job.
Yeah, yeah. Now, that's not to say that there haven't been some things where you kind of go, all right, LeBron leaves Cleveland, they get 1. Chris Paul leaves New Orleans, they get 1. And honestly, look, I think it's intellectually embarrassing to discuss the potential of what is literally called a lottery to be rigged. Like if you've ever been in any sort of drawing, you know the deal. You get your little ticket, you hang out, you're like, maybe I'll win this, and then the drawing takes place and your ticket number isn't called. It's just bad luck. It doesn't mean it's fixed. So I have no space for any of that. I think the one thing that led to this outcry wasn't necessarily the Jazz falling to 5. I think it was Dallas getting 1 after they moved on from Luka. And so I think a lot of people were drawing the line like, hey, keep the Lakers relevant, trade Luka at L.A., and we'll take care of you. Now, that's also dumb, but I do think one of the things that stings if you're a Jazz fan, it's not that you weren't able to get luck to move up, and you're at 5. I think it's 2 of your Western Conference peers. You're already far behind Oklahoma City. You're already far behind Denver, Minnesota. I could keep going. You're already far behind so many teams that have good players now and mechanisms to add good players later, that the fact that the Spurs are able to add the Dylan Harper kid and the Mavs are able to add Cooper Flagg, it's 2 more Western Conference teams that now you look at that and you say, we are light years behind them as well. I think that probably adds to the sting.
Well, I think it definitely does. Like, part of this has to be that you have to look at yourselves and say, you know what, whatever this process has been, it hasn't gone as well as we want. Even if you want to say, well, the process, the plan wasn't to win yet. It's like, I got it. But while this process is put together, what has been the most positive part of this process? To me, it's Will Hardy's 6-year extension because I think he's the right guy. What has it been? There's no identity. There's no culture. Okay? Yeah. Okay, you were planning on losing out. That's fine. But you haven't. I haven't. And somebody else can come on and be like, I've seen this from this guy and that from that guy. I haven't seen enough yet that makes me go, you know what? That right there, that here is going to move them this direction. I remember in the Quinn years. In the early Quinn years going, okay, they got something here. They're big here, and they're defensive-oriented, and they've lost 9 in a row, but they have an identity, and there's something moving this direction now. Okay. And in this current situation, I'm not just trying to be critical. I know they're doing it differently than Dennis and Quinn and Kevin O'Connor back in the day. I'm not saying do it the way they did it. I'm just saying throughout all of this, okay, you've garnered a lot of assets. I'll give you that. And you, I think, have the right coach, right mind. But now it's making everything else come together. So when you did this to bet on yourself that you were going to get it right, now you got to put it to work. And that might mean moving up. And that might mean spending more than you probably wanted to, if it's the guy that you believe is going to turn this around. But you miss on this pick. And if you Dante Exum this thing, and I'm not saying they will, but if you Dante Exum this thing, you prolong this process.
Yeah, the number one thing you have to do is draft well. Bobby Marks was on earlier, and he outlined it perfectly. And here's the deal, and I hate to use this team as an example because right now they are the best example of roster construction under the new CBA, which has allowed teams that play in cities pretty similar to ours build up some really good teams that are going to be good now and be good for a long time. Now, the one outlier, and this is why this exercise is a little bit difficult, because you could look at Detroit, you can look at Orlando, you can look at Oklahoma City. You can look at some of the teams that are in cities like ours and were in places like this not too long ago and try to draw parallels. But the one failure with this exercise is OKC has Shea, Detroit has Cade, and Orlando has Paolo. And the Jazz don't have that guy. I like Lowry. I like Lowry a lot. He's not one of those guys. He is not a franchise, he's not a franchise building block. He can play really well for a really good team. And the Jazz could trade him, and he would start for probably any team in the league, maybe not a fully healthy Boston Celtic team, but you get my drift. So where the Jazz have failed so far and where these other teams have succeeded, like Sam Presti turned Paul George into Shea and other pieces and a bunch of draft capital. The Jazz so far have not turned Donovan or Rudy into a cornerstone. They turned Donovan into Lowry and some other pieces and some draft picks, of course. They got Walker in the Rudy deal, which is a nice piece. But if you're going to move off of Donovan Mitchell at 25, who's probably about to be named first-team All-NBA, or Gobert at 28, who loves Salt Lake and didn't want to leave, if you're going to move off those franchise-changing pieces, among the things you receive in return, whether it's a tangible piece like Shea right away or a draft pick later on, you have to find the guy that you can build around, and they have not found that yet. So if you can turn Paul George into Shea, and then you have some lean years with him as the cornerstone, and you can see that he is one of those dudes, then all you have to do is draft right around him, and then it gives you the ability with some deals, to be able to bring in an Isaiah Hartenstein or an Alex Caruso, who guarded Jokic in Game 7. But they draft Chet, they draft Isaiah Joe, they bring in Cason Wallace, Aaron Wiggins, Jalen Williams. They knocked that one out of the park. So, yes, Sam Presti turned Paul George into Shea, but he also has this crazy hit rate on his draft picks. So the problem with the Jazz isn't only that they haven't turned Donovan or Rudy into a star. There are legitimate questions about Isaiah Collier and Keontae George, and we need to see Taylor Hendricks healthy. And Cody Williams, by all the analytics, just had a historically bad rookie year. So it's twofold. Okay, so if we look at all the teams that have rebuilt and now we're in a position where they're playing high-level basketball in cities like ours, you've got to start with Ant. You have to start with Shea. You have to start with Cade. You have to start with Paolo and then build from the ground up. The Jazz haven't been able to do that. Attendant to it, if we're honest, they have not hit on their picks, Tony.
No.
Since Danny kind of took over the reins. They just haven't.
I had a Jazz fan ask me, I was at the Sacramento airport yesterday and ran into a couple different Salt Lake residents, but one of them was a Jazz fan as well and was talking about the 5 pick and this and that. What do you think? And I just said, well, they can catch up in terms of gaining ground from where they have been up to this point. But when they made the wholesale change 3 years ago, I thought, okay, no, you're turning the page, and I'm totally fine with that. I would not have predicted that they've made what I would consider very little to no forward progress. So for you to lose, that's one thing. But I do not see a ton of forward progress. And I know that we're supposed to be positive about the Jazz and they're our NBA team. And no, I'm going to be very honest. I'm looking at it going, I get that the plan wasn't to win, but I don't see other things that tell me this is a surging direction forward here, here, and here. And when I see that, I say, okay, you can gain ground on that with hitting draft picks and all of that and catch up from the distance that I thought you would be at. But I am curious as to why. I'm curious as to why 3 years. I mean, there's really nothing to show for this. We've got a ton of assets. Yeah, I know you've had them for a while. We've had great draft picks. Yeah, I know this isn't I know this is a really good one, but you've had some nice picks here and some selections to make up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So you have room, you have weapons, you have opportunity. And I still think, and some people disagree with me on the Will Hardy thing. I'm like, no, I think this guy's magnificent. I do. I think all of his principles, I think the fact that he wildly overperformed with that team he had, 3 years ago and then 2 years ago. I mean, that was amazing, Spence. And then they flushed out and said, okay, we're going to bottom out. We're going to do it this way. Okay. But now I got to see something in that process that tells me here is the light. Here is the direction. Here is the momentum. It's like anybody who's going to go to the gym or make a whole a major change in their life. People may not see it right away, but you can feel and see the momentum that's around you based on different decisions, different opportunities, different habits. They may see them under the surface. I'm just telling them I don't see them, and I've watched as much as I can of them, and I don't see it. So I'm hoping for them that in the near future, this can be turned around. You nail the 5 pick, or you move up and you nail the pick, and then you start really seeing some surge go in the right direction.
Yeah, and as far as just simply being positive and believing the messages that are it's just propaganda coming out of the organization, and I can't roll that way. I can't just call something other than what I see. And yes, the organization wants you to believe that the rebuild is on track. And yes, at times they plan a story where it's like, oh, hey, just so you know, we haven't been rebuilding. We've been tearing down for 3 years, and now we're rebuilding. That's so insulting. Like, no, you started the rebuild when you traded away 2 stars in their prime and a really good coach left and a really good roster constructor left. That's when the rebuild started. The clock started 3 years ago, not now. Okay, so you can't just propagate messaging through, team-owned media or try to plan a story in the D-News or the Trib and then expect me to not see what I'm seeing. And look, I want the Jazz to win as bad as anybody. I mean, look, I have a dashboard. I keep track of how many people listen to which segments and how many people listen to which interviews. And when Donovan and Rudy and that team was kind of making their way through and having a little bit of playoff success early on, and then, the interest in the Jazz was through the roof, a lot of people were listening to the NBA segments in a way that they just aren't right now.
Mm.
It's better for my business if the Jazz win. I'm as frustrated as anybody.
Better for everybody.
I can't just be positive about something that I'm looking at right now without a lot of hope. Because when you look at teams with draft capital, future ability to add pieces via the draft, Oklahoma City's at the top. And Oklahoma City isn't just in a position where they're going to be able to add pieces in the future. They're awesome right now. They should win the championship. Then you have teams like Brooklyn. They're in the same spot as the Jazz. The Houston Rockets have 10 draft picks coming their way. They just made the playoffs with a really, really good team. The San Antonio Spurs have 9 future picks at their disposal. The Detroit Pistons are on this list. The Sacramento Kings, the Orlando Magic. So teams that are already good are in the same area the Jazz are with draft assets. So it's one thing to say we have draft assets. Okay, that's great. There is a tremendous amount of pressure on them to get this thing right this offseason.
Yeah.
Now, next year is going to look the same as this year. There's no scenario. I mean, there are rumors about San Antonio at 2 or Philly at 3. Maybe they can move up. Maybe they can grab another lottery pick. But we need to see Taylor healthy if we're fair. Cody, I mean, he's got years to go based off what we saw last year. I don't know if Keontae George is a rotational piece for a good team. Isaiah Collier, you can't have your lead guard shooting 26% from 3. I like Lowry. I like Walker. And that might be it. I think Filipowski showed some things down the stretch.
Yeah.
But if the best pick you've made is the one you've grabbed at 32 and the chances that you had in the lottery in the mid-first round you've struck out on, it indicates there's still miles and miles to go.
Yeah. And the comparisons you make to the other teams, I think it jumps out. Because the first thing I saw with the reaction was, they will never help a small market team.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I tell you, the Denver Nuggets are recent champions, right? And I know they're not like small market, right? But the Milwaukee Bucks are recent champions. The Spurs won 5 of them. They put together a good run of winning, consistently winning. The Jazz, by the way, in the 90s won a ton. More teams Jordan beat in the finals came from small markets than big markets. I still don't call Phoenix a small market, but I know it's not. Consider it that in the NBA landscape. It's just not. But anyway, not the point. It wasn't a major destination, if you will, for NBA free agents and all that at the time. So when I look at it, I say, no, I think all across the board, if you want to say it's all even, it's not. Okay, I get it. Some places are probably more wished upon by a free agent than, say, Salt Lake. But when I look at the way teams have been able to build championship teams, I look at the way that they're able to do it with culture. I look at the way Mike Malone was able to do, and I know he just got let go, which is stunning, by the way, but how he did it with Denver, and I watched him in the years where they refused to be consistent with defensive habits, then at least weren't terrible in that area. Boom. Put a ring on their finger. Like, I watched it all come together for others. And there's no reason this place couldn't. Fan support, everything you could want in that way. So, and it's a competitive league. I got that. And I'm not saying this team should be in that position now, but I did think they would be more along than they have been. I did think that they would be at a bigger step in this process. It has surprised me.
If San Antonio is willing to move 2, or Philly is willing to move 3, do you put Markkanen on the table? You put Lowry on the table?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to bet on that being this cornerstone piece to the ultimate future, then yes. Yes, I do. But with that said, you better be ready, because if I'm them, I want Lowry, I want a swap, and I want a future at basement. Yep. That's the basement.
All right, Tone, before I say you loose, reminder, the Salt Lake Bees and the Miller Sports and Entertainment invite all to celebrate the grand opening of the Salt Lake Bees team store at the ballpark at America First Square, coming up tomorrow, 5 o'clock p.m., 1111 South Ballpark Drive. New merch, great deals, and more. Go to beesteamstore.com. What do you want our listeners to know?
Man, get in there. Check out all the latest and the best gear. You're going to love all the different types of hats that they have. Tons of hats. Las Abejas, which, of course, is great. Those are our Copa hats, Copa jerseys. All the different. I'm sure they'll have a ton of different looks on the variety of the rebrand with the new gear that you're going to see out there. They did a wonderful, wonderful job with that. I like all the new hats, but whether it's hats, jerseys, T-shirts, and more, I've always said it. Yeah, if you need it, they've got it. If you don't need it, they still got it. So go get it. Father's Day's around the corner. Get it done early.
That's right. Great to see you, my friend. Okay.
Hey, you as well.
Tony Parks stops by today, courtesy of our friends at Cortland Roofing. Re-roofing and roof repair experts with over 20 years of experience. They're family-owned and operated. Call Cortland Roofing today to get free rain gutters with any roof replacement. So when they were in studio, they ran the numbers by me about exactly how much money you save when you get free rain gutters. It's thousands of dollars. If you're in the market for a new roof, Cortland Roofing has to be the place to go. Give them a call today at 801-615-5560. That's 801-615-5560. 801-615-5560 or online at cortlandroofing.com. All right, Scottie Scheffler made some history over the weekend, and the New York Knicks are in the conference finals. Easton Folster, the executive director of the UGA, will stop by so I can complain about how long it takes to play around and not getting tee times. And we'll do some golf and some basketball with Easton coming up right here on ESPN 700. All right, we'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the program coming up in just a little bit. We're about to send somebody to play golf at Stonebridge. It is our Festival of Teas brought to you by the UGA, so stay tuned for that. Speaking of the UGA, our next guest is the executive director of the UGA, and we're only going to talk golf for the next 20 minutes. Easton Folster, happy Monday, buddy. How we doing?
I'm doing fantastic, and you guys couldn't have picked a better song. In fact, I was hoping you would. That's just that made my heart happy.
There you go. And we're not only going to talk golf because your text offering your presence on this radio show came with a mandate. And Easton, even though you're a local boy, you happen to be a lifelong fan of the New York Knickerbockers. Let me start with the origin story. When did you and why did you become a Knicks fan?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, obviously being a 90s kid, the Knicks were a little more relevant, back then than they are, in the previous 2 decades. Now, obviously I had the Jazz to root for, but for some reason I hooked on with the Knicks, was a big Patrick Ewing fan, and I will say that I've remained loyal through some dark years, and now there seems to be somewhat of a light at the end of the tunnel, so things are looking a little brighter, that's for sure.
So I wonder what you find most likable about this iteration of the Knicks, because Porter, my producer, is a younger Knicks fan, and so he has this idea in his head that the Melo years were awesome, and they just weren't. They won a couple of playoff series, and look, I'm a Melo guy. Love Melo. So I'll bottom line this. To me, this is the most likable Knicks team literally since 1999. What do you like most about this team?
Yeah, I agree. They're fun to watch. I think the compelling component is the fact that I feel like they're never out of a game. I've told some friends and, fellow basketball fans that I feel like if the Knicks can get to the fourth quarter within 10 points and Jalen Brunson is in the game, we have a shot. And I think being able to watch a player like him with as clutch as he's been, it's amazing. I mean, it almost feels like this confidence when he has the ball that something magical is going to happen. So even if we're down, which we've obviously seen in the Celtics series, the Pistons series as well, you have a chance with Jalen Brunson, and he's a closer, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. But it's a gritty team. They hustle. They play hard. I wish they wouldn't dig these holes. I'm sure I speak for all Knicks fans, but they find a way to claw out, and it's been heart-stopping sometimes, but it's been a lot of fun up to this point.
Did you anticipate Friday night happening the way it did at all? I mean, I finished the show and drove home. And you know what, man? It was kind of fun because I will say in this space, when you do this for a living, and as long as I've done it now, approaching 20 years full time, you do have to be agnostic a little bit. You do have to kind of put the biases and fandom aside in order to do the job the right way. Like I would love for the Jazz to be good again, but I cannot be dishonest about where they're at. Whenever anybody asks me, who do you cheer locally for? I said, all of them. I want everybody to win because when everybody's winning, more people listen to Sports Talk Radio, and it's better for my bottom line. It's better for my business. But the PTSD of being a Knicks fan for really since I was 10, 11 years old really settled in, and I approached that game on Friday night with tremendous trepidation. And even when they were up like 40, I'm like, I still don't feel like this was real. So what stood out most to you about the way they just blew out the Celtics on Friday?
Well, I'm with you. I was terrified. When we lost Game 5 the way that we did, even without Tatum, I was really nervous. And it just has felt like Knicks never really blow teams out. If anything, they've been getting blown out in games and have clawed back, which has been a lot of fun. But I wish I could say I saw the Knicks blowing them out. I didn't have that level of confidence. I thought it'd be a great game. But it seemed like, they had their foot on the gas and they didn't let it go. And I'm with you, even when we got up 20-30, and I think we even touched 40-plus points, there was still some trepidation, like you said, that the bottom was going to fall out. And, as we know with Coach Tibbs, of course, kept his starters in the whole entire game. So I'm not even sure that he was confident that we were going to hold on. But exciting way to win the game and a lot of momentum going into the Eastern Conference Finals, so it's exciting.
What is your confidence level against this Pacer team that just has a grip of physical pit bull wings that just want to fight everybody all the time?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great series. I think we'll match up well. I think that Knicks fans might be making a mistake and kind of overlooking the Pacers and looking on to the finals. That would be a mistake. I mean, Pacers manhandled a really good Cavs team, and so I could see this going 6. I could go see it going 7. But of course, as a true Knicks fan, I think we'll get it done. I'd have to say maybe Knicks in 6 would be my prediction. In fact, I think that's what we've done the last 2 series is one in Game 6. So hopefully we get that done again.
Does it make it sweeter that it's been so long? I mean, I've kind of gone back and forth on this because certainly as a fan, every year you want your team to have a shot. And if we're honest, the Knicks have not had a shot at doing anything since 1999. I mean, it literally has been 25 years. And if we're honest, the Jazz haven't had a chance to win a championship, in my opinion, probably in that same time frame. But during that time, the Jazz had D. Will and Booz and Memo, and then they had Hayward and Favors in that group. Then they had Mitchell and Gobert and good teams. So I know the Jazz right now are nowhere close to competing, and we have a fan base that's a little bit disenfranchised with the product. And my hope is, when the Jazz are able to get this thing figured out and they're back to respectability and competition, our community here and our basketball fan base here will be reminded of how fun spring basketball is. So I know as a long-suffering Knick fan, you probably prefer to have better teams over the past 25 years, but does it make it any sweeter that it's been so long?
Yeah, I think so. And I think most Knicks fans would say that. I mean, if anyone saw the social media buzz around the Knicks fans going absolutely crazy in New York City, I mean, on one side, it's a little embarrassing. I mean, all we did was win 2 series, but they celebrated, like we won the championship. So I think you see that somewhat of a relief, from fans that it's been so long that we've made it to this point. And it certainly is sweet. I've had to stop myself from, daydreaming to what might be in a few weeks. We still have a really, really long way to go for that. But no, it's been 2 decades or 25 years since, we got to this point. And so I think, for all Knicks fans, there's this certain release that, it's been satisfying to see the team perform. I listened to your previous segment about the Jazz playing the lottery odds and some of their struggles and tearing it down, and can't help but be reminded that that's what the Knicks were doing for the better part of the last 2 decades. And so it feels good, to be at this point, and hopefully we can keep it rolling.
All right, we do need to talk a little golf, but before we get there, I have your Instagram pulled up, and number 1, congrats. That's number 1. I was going to ask you if you're raising your young fella as a fan of this team, because one of the things, like my poor son has grown up Jazz, Knicks, Jets. Luckily, we have the Yankees, but I feel bad that I ever encouraged him to cheer for the Knicks or the Jets. But he was at one of the games, and he posted a picture in his John Starks jersey that I bought him when he was about the same age as your boy. And I see you've got your boy in a Jalen Brunson jersey, yeah?
That's right. Yeah, no, and he's for only being 4 years old, he's a real fan. I mean, he can name, I would say, at least 6 or 7 players on the team. So for being 4 years old, I'd call him a real fan. I mean, he's watching the games with me, and he's excited. And as you mentioned, wife expecting, and I've told her if we're lucky enough to win it all, Jalen, the name Jalen is certainly in play. She's not necessarily a fan, but I've just warned her that Jalen is in play. So you might see that here in a few months. But yeah, I mean, we're excited, and I know my son is too. He, of course, didn't have to suffer through the long decades of ineptitude. But yeah, we're pretty pumped at our residence.
Thinking Jalen Spencer Folster. How's that land?
I like it. I'm all in.
You put a basketball in his hand. Can he shoot it? Does he dribble it all?
He can play. Yeah, he's an athlete.
Nice.
Right now he's just kind of trying to figure it all out: soccer, t-ball, basketball. But he can play, and like I said, he watches, he observes, and he's a big fan. So Jalen's his favorite player. We went to the Knicks Jazz game when they were here in town, and we caught Jalen's attention. He waved at him, and of course that just made his day. I think it made my day more than his, but Yeah, he's a big fan.
Have you put a golf club in this young fella's hand yet?
Yeah, a little bit. Just those plastic sets. Golf's tricky, as you know. I mean, we're adults. I still haven't figured it out, and I've been playing, for the better part of a decade. So I feel like that's a long road. Maybe I can get him somewhere quicker than golf. But eventually, yeah, we'll put a golf club in his hand and see what he can do. But got a long ways to go for that.
Hopefully, because when I was younger, I thought it was boring. I did not want to play golf. My grandfather, may he rest in peace, loved it. And he always said, like, you're a natural athlete. You could be good at this if you wanted to. And then I would just get frustrated and quit, and I'd want to go shoot buckets. I want to go play basketball or football. So are you planning on fighting through the boredom to encourage him to keep playing the game? Or are you just going to let him find out what he loves on his own?
Yeah, probably more of the latter, figure out what he likes. I think exposure is important, especially for kids, expose them to everything and let them kind of pick what they excel at and what they enjoy. And if it's golf, great. That would make me certainly a happy father, but not going to push him, in that direction. But, hopefully, like I did, and it sounds like maybe you did as a youth, he'll pick it up recreationally and, from there, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, no, you're right. I mean, 18 holes as a kid, that's long, and it takes a little bit of time to learn to enjoy that. But we'll see what happens with him.
What do you think it is about this game, the game of golf, that seems to draw people in on a level where it truly turns into an addiction? And I'm not even kidding. What do you think it is about how people just get addicted to the game?
I think it's those little moments of success, which of course are relative to the golfer. If you're incredible and you're really talented, obviously, your success in that little addiction might be shooting a 64, 63, going for a course record, winning championships, but for the rest of us, it might be flushing a 4-iron and that feel of, hitting a green in regulation and hitting a drive that's straight and far. And it's those, I've always found, if you can get a golfer to hit, just 1, 2, or 3 of those moments in a round where they think that was a lot of fun, I think I can do that again. I think that's where the addiction comes in as, wow, I just flushed a 4-iron. That's how it feels. I'm going to go back next week and I'm going to give it another shot. And then if you can turn that into a few times each round, that's where the development comes. And that's where, those moments of, like you've kind of said, that addiction, which I think we've all had with golf, those that, love the game. It's those small moments of success that give you a taste in, what, the really good player, experiences on every shot basis. We don't get those very often, but with golf, on any given day, there's a lot of players that can hit a shot like a professional. They do it consistently. We do it maybe once a round, but it's that one shot that I think gives people that itch.
It's interesting. You reference how the pros are so consistent with it. I don't know that I fully understood their ability to figure out problems and get out of trouble until I went down to Bay Hill as an honorary observer and followed Sam Stevens, Nick Taylor around the course. And then when you look at some of the stats like fairways hit in regulation or greens hit in regulation, these guys aren't hitting every fairway. They're not hitting every green. And watching their ability to problem solve has become like a fascination of mine. Have you noticed the same as you've watched some of these pros? Like, yes, to your point, they're going to hit most of their shots pretty flush, but they're not hitting every fairway. They're not hitting every green. They've got to figure out how to solve problems and get out of trouble. That to me is like the line of delineation.
Sure. And, and I think it's avoiding the big mistakes that I think, amateur players, tend to make the big numbers. You just don't see as often from the pros. I'll go out and make a number of double bogeys and triple bogeys in a round, and that's what kind of adds to that score. And those guys, bogey for them is bad because, like you said, they're able to calculate, they're able to see risk, probably unlike, us, everyday amateur player. And so, I think they avoid the big numbers more often than probably, the double-digit handicap player is. And then just the talent, to be able to pull off some of the shots. I'll say that maybe I can see the shot that's required, but I don't have the talent to pull the shot off. So I think that combination of talent and risk management is really what makes, professional golfers the elite.
You have a favorite golfer to watch right now or historically? Is there one that comes to mind?
Yeah, I hate to be right on the bandwagon, but I can't find anything not to like about Scotty Scheffler, both from a playing standpoint and just from who he is as a person. Of course, I don't know him personally, but from everything I see, just seems like a very likable guy. Like the way he plays his swing, little unorthodox. You don't see that every day, and is consistent and just wins. And so, like I said, I hate to jump on the bandwagon of probably where everybody else is at. But when he's in contention, I certainly like to jump in front of the TV and watch. He's probably one of my favorites right now.
When he's dialed in, and I've talked about this on the show with a lot of my golf guests quite a bit, one of my big regrets is that I was not dialed in to the game of golf when Tiger was Tiger. I wasn't watching. I had an opportunity in 1997. I was living with my grandparents, and as I referenced, my grandfather was a big golfer. And for whatever reason, Easton, it is known on the show that my grandfather nicknamed me Spencer Doobie when I was 2 years old. I don't know why. There's no way he knew what that was. I can promise you that. And so 1997, I'm a senior in high school, and I'm downstairs, and my grandfather yells down, "Doobie, come upstairs. This young man is about to make history." So we watched the final round of Tiger at Augusta, but I did not see Tiger at peak Tiger very much. I've watched some documentaries, I read the book, and I find him to be very fascinating. And I know that it is very, very dangerous to compare. Like, golf gatekeepers, in a way, remind me a little bit of NBA gatekeepers when the Jordan stuff comes up. Like, there are so many people, and by the way, I'm one of them. There's so many people that will say Mike is the greatest, and he'll always be the greatest. Do not come to me with Kobe or LeBron, or I don't want to talk about it, okay? And whenever I draw a comparison to Tiger, it's like sacrilegious for golf gatekeepers. But at what point do we start talking about Scotty as potentially in the midst of the beginning of a run that kind of feels like it did when Tiger was being Tiger, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think we're there. I think the run has at least started. Like you said, now what made Tiger so great is, how long the run really was and the dominance really was. I mean, we saw with Rory, he came out too, when he was a younger golfer, and he started that journey. And I think he had, if I'm not mistaken, he had 4 majors right off the bat, and then had to wait 11 years until he just recently won the Masters. And so, there's some cautionary tale there as well. As yes, I think he's on that path. I think there's been other golfers like Rory, like Jordan Spieth, that have come out hot and then they've fizzled. So to be able to be that dominant, that consistent, I think that's what made Tiger and that's what made Jack great. Now, I think Scotty is certainly right there on the path. Only 28. He's got, I would say 15, 20 years of competitive golf left, and we'll see what he can do. Tiger with 15 majors, Scotty now has 3. So he's got a little ways to go, but I mean, I'd be shocked if you asked me to predict. I'd be shocked if he's not at least at double-digit majors by the end of his career. So he's a lot of fun to watch, and I think we're watching something special, and we'll see what happens.
Does the live thing move the needle for you at all? I mean, I was going to ask you, I don't know how it would affect your job, but in and around the game of golf, it still seems to dominate the conversation. Part of me feels like we've settled into acceptance, if that makes sense, where all right, live is just going to be around, and it's just going to be another tour. It's going to be like the USFL or minor league baseball or whatever it is. It's just, for a while it was, okay, the merger's happening, and then there were negotiations, and Jay Monahan and the leader of the PIF fund were kind of like, all right, we're making progress. Then there's no progress. Then the president gets involved. It's like, okay, maybe this is going to move the needle. And it hasn't. And we're just kind of in the place where we've come to this acceptance that live is going to be live and the tour is going to be the tour. And the best players on live that have earned the right to play in majors are going to have the right to do that. It feels like that's where we've landed. Do you think that's where we're always going to be? And does this stuff kind of move the needle with what you have to deal with day to day?
Yeah, it's really tough to predict. I do agree that I think that we've kind of landed in this acceptance. I think that there was some turmoil there when Liv was picking off some of the best tour players. And I think that made everyone uneasy. That's settled. And now kind of the rumors are Bryson could come back, John Rahm could come back. There's some regrets that they took the money and don't get to play on the tour. As LIV loses those players, if that does happen, and they lose a John Rahm and they lose a Bryson DeChambeau, I don't know. I mean, there's not a lot of interest in LIV golf right now. And if there was any, without those golfers, I really don't know. Like you said, outside of being a minor league, I just don't know how they survive. Now, could they continue to pump money and try and, I'll say steal more players or take away more players from the tour? Maybe. But that hasn't happened, I feel like, in, at least a year or two. So I don't know. If I had to predict, I don't know that LIV will be here long in the way that we know it. But I do agree that I think we've kind of landed in a place of acceptance, and it seems like it's kind of settled a little bit, and maybe they can come to grips or come to terms on an agreement where we can get some of these players on tour. Because how fun has it been to watch Bryson DeChambeau? I know he's not for everybody, but he's been incredibly relevant at the last three majors. I think top 5 in the last 3, and a great personality. And it's been a lot of fun to have him. I mean, golf is missing having Bryson DeChambeau's and having John Rahm's play, in on a consistent basis on weekends that we all get to watch. So hopefully we get those players all playing on one tour again. I'm strictly on the amateur side. Far more on the local side than ever having to deal with LIV. So, I just cheer for what's best for golf and what gets people excited to play. I don't know that that's LIV. I think it's more like Scotty, on this tear that he's on, or Rory winning the Masters. I think that's what gets people excited. So that's what I tend to root for.
We don't really need to get more people excited to play, Easton. We just don't. Okay. I've already presented my endeavor of #shrink the game, which you summarily dismissed. And of course I'm being facetious, but before I set you loose, I know you've got tournaments, you've got mid-ams, you've got state-ams qualifying, senior, and all that, women, all that stuff. So what do you want our listeners to know about what you have going on with the UGA?
Yeah, appreciate it. And, very much we're in the camp of expanding the game, and, we want everyone to come out and play as much golf as humanly possible and stack up the tee sheets. And hopefully there's still some tee times that you can book as well. But, my challenge for any golfer that's listening, or even non-golfer, is to push themselves to the next level, whatever that may be. Golf is on a boom right now. It seems like everyone's, trying to get in the game one way or another, whether it's at Topgolf, whether it's going to the driving range. I would encourage everyone to go give Topgolf a try. Go to the driving ranges if you're new to the game. And as you become more familiar, we'd love to have you as members of the UGA, get a handicap index and start tracking your progress. That's our goal. We think it's, we help develop those players that can go from just beginning to maybe one day playing, championship level golf here in the state. So I'd encourage everyone to go out and try something new, whatever that may be. And if you'll visit UGA.org, that's how you can become a member, get a handicap index, and play as much golf as possible. I
got to tell you, before I set you loose, after you were on last time, I showed up the next morning to play a round of Bonneville. And as I checked in, paid the fee, as I was walking out, one of my guys up there said, "Hey, go easy on Easton, will you?" So I don't know if you got any feedback last time, but people were listening, and I apologize if I went too hard on you.
No, of course not. I know where you're coming from. Everyone wants a tee time, and everyone wants to get out there and play. Like I said, from our standpoint, love seeing tee sheets full, and our golf professionals are working really hard to make it a good experience. But no, we want you to be able to get out there and play, a quick round too. We know you're busy, so hopefully you'll keep playing.
Oh, I will. I will, buddy. I appreciate the time today. And if the Knicks keep advancing, we're going to keep having you on, because now the good luck charm apparently is in play, all right?
I love it. Thanks for your time, Spence. Go Knicks.
Easton Folster, Executive Director of the Utah Golf Association. Go to UGA.org. Or maybe don't. I don't know. Maybe play pickleball. Maybe go for a walk. Maybe ride your bike. Maybe walk the dog.
You're crazy. You're
out
of control.
I feel like too many people are way into it now.
Listen, I get it. As a guy who, is often looking for a tennis court around Salt Lake and it's full, I understand.
All right.
I do.
Okay.
full of pickleballers too.
So, oh yeah, and most of the tennis courts are now open for pickleball players as well.
Don't get me started.
Just go up to the corner of, let's see, First South and University Parkway, that park there, the tennis courts. Frat bros, no shirts, pickleball all day.
I know. They're always there, too.
Yeah, they are. All right, so go to UGA.org. Okay, just do that for our guy Easton. But, honestly, golf it's hard. It's boring. It's expensive. It's time consuming. Like, why do you guys even want to play? Go do something else with your time.
Yeah, it's here's the thing. If you go and you haven't played golf yet and you're wanting to get into it, you're not going to be good for years and years and years. Just know that.
Yep.
Just know that, it takes 10,000 hours plus probably of practice. Those are reps that you can't shortcut.
Yeah, you guys don't want to put yourself through that grind. You really don't.
Maybe you do.
Maybe you do. It's wildly addicting. Anyway, time now to send somebody golfing for free. Stonebridge. Ooh, nice. Love Stonebridge. 18 holes to Stonebridge on the line. It is the Festival of Tees brought to you by our friends at the UGA. ESPN Festival of Tees powered by the Utah Golf Association. Each day of spring, ESPN 700 is giving away rounds of golf to the best courses in the state. Listen to the Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell, the Sean O'Connell Show, and the Drive with Spence Checketts for your chance to win each day from ESPN and the Utah Golf Association. Details can be found at ESPN700sports.com. Here's what I'm going to ask the texters today. Phone line's open, 877-353-0700. Not to call. It's not how we roll on this show. Text in, do you support my endeavor to hashtag shrink the game? Are you on my side? Send us a funny, snarky text, and we'll send somebody to play golf at Stonebridge. Special thanks to Easton Folster for stopping by. All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. We're late. Got to get to break. 5 o'clock hour of the program comes your way next, right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, let's get it. Drive at 5 time Monday afternoon style. Happy Monday to you. Your commute home on a Monday afternoon starts right now. Always good to get Monday in the rearview mirror. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. It's been a kind of a cold May. It's been kind of a cold week. It's chilly and cloudy today with temperatures and conditions improving throughout the week and a really warm weekend ahead. So hopefully you have something fun planned. Hopefully you did something fun over the weekend. Got out and played a little golf, a little rainy Sunday, not a bad Saturday. We did have the Kilby Block party going on down at the Utah State Fair Park. So happy Monday to you, as it is every single day. It's good to have you along for the ride. Bobby Marks, ESPN NBA front office insider, is going to join us coming up in just a little bit. And Bobby will walk us through kind of the current landscape of the NBA, and we'll talk about this era of parity as it's being celebrated with this CBA expiring in 2030, which gives the Jazz 5 more years to try to get involved in a landscape of pro basketball that appears to be pretty advantageous for teams playing in markets that, historically speaking, are not that desirable, as we have the conference finals set with cities like Minnesota, cities like Indianapolis, cities like Oklahoma City, 3 markets that are pretty similar to where we find ourselves in Salt Lake City. And we'll talk to Bobby about the Jazz offseason. We'll do a little conference finals. And, of course, we will talk NBA draft as the Jazz are going to pick 5th. Interesting report today from Jeremy Woo of ESPN, who covers Philly, that Philadelphia is dangling number 3, potentially willing to move the 3rd pick overall. Now, if you do some of the numbers, it's problematic for the Jazz to get involved. When it comes to the report, Philly is interested in Kevin Durant and Lauri Markkanen. If you're going to trade Lauri Markkanen, I was looking at Philly's roster earlier, to make it work with the economics, a Paul George or a Tyrese Maxey has to be involved in the deal. I doubt Philly's going to move off of Maxey. I think they'd be fine moving off with Paul George, but I do not think the Jazz would be interested in grabbing Paul George. So there are going to be a lot of rumors between now and June the 25th, when draft night actually takes place, about teams being willing to move out of their pick or move down or move up. And will the Jazz get involved? A couple of different reports indicating the Jazz are trying to be bold and trying to do something this offseason to expedite the growth of this team, but only time will tell. But Jeremy Woo from ESPN with an interesting report. Breaking news earlier, the San Francisco 49ers have signed Fred Warner, former BYU linebacker, to a 3-year, $63 million extension with $56 million guaranteed. Now that makes Fred Warner the highest paid linebacker in pro football. Well earned. That dude is a stud. So that came out a little bit earlier today. No NBA basketball tonight. We do have conference finals set in both the NBA and the NHL. High speed ahead to the NBA and the NHL draft, where the Utah Hockey Club will draft 4th overall in their first year of existence. The Utah Hockey Club received luck that the Jazz have not received in 50 years of existence, if we're honest. Tomorrow's Minnesota OKC in pro basketball. That's 6:30 Mountain Time on ESPN. Then on Wednesday, it is the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers. That is on TNT. TNT now has the East. ESPN now has the West. The good news with ESPN not having the East is you do not have to explain to your children that Stephen A. Smith actually does not play for the Knicks. 5 o'clock hour today is brought to you by Advanced Window Products. You can get $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. It's a local Salt Lake company operated by our guy, Nate Orchard, the mayor of Sac Lake City, and Jake Weber. Great family business. They've been around forever, and they care about our community. So as we approach the warm weather, if you need new windows, because when it gets really hot, if you have old windows, you guys know the deal. House heats up, jack up the AC, you get your power bill, you're like, wait, what? So you can save a grip of money, and if you need new windows, now's the time to do it, because you can save $2,500 when you buy 10 windows or more. But if you feel like you're going to wait to get new windows maybe before winter, call today as well, because just by getting on the schedule, you lock in the savings of $2,500 when you purchase 10 windows or more with our friends at Advanced Window Products. So here's the deal. Give them a call at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100, or online at advancedwindows.com. All right, we'll catch a quick break. Bobby Marks is our guest. Coming up on the other side, right here on ESPN 700. All right, final segment of the program on this Monday afternoon. The sun is trying to shine. I feel like it's been a minute. A little rainy, a little cloudy, a little chilly for May. If April showers bring May flowers, what do May showers bring?
Hopefully some more flowers.
That's the best you could do?
We need more flowers, I guess.
Why do we need more flowers? We need consistent sunshine. We need warmth. That's what we need. May has been chilly. We've had a cold spring.
Yeah. Okay. We can have like a nice warm June then.
Okay.
For you.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. No NBA playoff basketball tonight. Tom Haberstroh is going to binge The Last of Us. What do you have planned on the docket on a Monday night when the conference finals don't get going until tomorrow?
Yeah. I'm getting to the point where I probably need to make a list on stuff I need to catch up on when you're talking all the series and whatnot. I am not up to date on Gemstones, which is one I do enjoy. So maybe some of that. I'm building a garden this week, so I'm finishing that.
Look at you, Mr. Green Thumb.
But not much.
Got Bob Vila over here.
Who's that?
Oh, my gosh.
Is that the Tool House guy?
This Old House with Bob, you know what? That actually ages me a lot because I think I was young when Bob, I'm gonna do a Google search. You've never heard of Bob Vila?
I think I know who you're talking about, but deep memories.
There was an old TV show.
Oh, yeah. The Tool House guy.
Yeah, there was an old TV show called This Old House with Bob Vila, and my parents loved it. And when I was a kid, we used to watch it. I don't even know when it was on. It was probably on like back in the 80s. That may have been, honestly, the oldest reference that I've ever made on the show. Vila was hired as the host of This Old House in 1979.
And then wasn't he the guy like across the fence on Tim the...
No.
Was it not the same guy?
No, it's not the same guy.
I thought it was the same guy.
Let's see. This Old House was on from 1979 to 1989. That officially is the oldest reference I've ever made on this show. I think I told you I shocked somebody recently who asked me when I was born, when I revealed that I was actually born in the 70s. That's the oldest reference I've ever made on the show, for sure.
I dig it. I like the 70s references.
So you're building a garden in your house, in your yard, outside of the house. Any are these flowers? Or are they vegetables that you'll be able to actually eat?
I usually, if I have the space, I like to grow like everything that I've got, all my vegetables and stuff. I like to grow it myself. So that's the hope. Maybe a few flowers if I got extra room. But berries, peppers, tomatoes, stuff I can eat.
I am very impressed. I do not have the natural green thumb. Is it something that you have naturally or as a result of being raised in God's country, did you just kind of learn the skill?
A little bit of both, I would say. I definitely, tended to enough crops growing up a little bit that I've got a bit of a head start, but yeah, it was always something I've done. I'm a green thumb whether it comes to the garden or like my house plants. Like I don't have pets, so those are my things until I have room for pets.
You grown any weed?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Don't incriminate yourself.
I was gonna say, can I tell you on the radio if
it's
I was?
A hard no.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Shout out to Fred Warner. 3 years, $63 million extension. So some good stuff there. I know what I wanted to ask you. Do you think the Mets are good? I can't wait for this. You think the Mets are good, don't you?
They have a good roster.
They do have a good roster.
But here's the thing. They weren't good 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 13 years ago. We never had good Mets teams. And then we started to have this thing where we did have good rosters. You go back to the year we did make the World Series. That pitching staff was the best in the league, and it wasn't close. You go back to like the Matt Harvey, Syndergaard, DeGrom. Like the fact that those Mets didn't make genuine runs outside of the one they lost to the Royals is a bit absurd. So we're now going on this, I want to say almost a decade now, Spence, where the Mets have had good rosters and still haven't been good. So I throw my hands up at this point. At least the Knicks, now that they have good rosters, they're actually good. The Mets seem to be able to still be bad or embarrassing when they have good players. But I'll hold off hope because they started all right.
Conference finals in pro basketball begins tomorrow with the Western side of things. Then on Wednesday, it's the Eastern side of things. So, of course, stay tuned. We'll have you covered there. Porter, what comes our way on a Tuesday edition of the show?
Yeah, on a Tuesday edition of the program, you mentioned, of course, NBA conference finals start tomorrow. So we'll double up on the NBA Daily Assist from ESPN. It's Tim McMahon joining us as he does each and every Tuesday. We're going to catch up with our friend Lee Ellis, of course, guy from Down Under, but he covered the entirety of the Eastern Conference semifinals. So we'll check in with Lee. Richard Smitty Smith in studio for an entire hour, and then we'll cap off the show catching up with someone from Real Salt Lake. Of course, a tough outing for them over the weekend, a 1-0 loss.
Did you try to lob a shot on target text to somebody that was rejected by RSL, or how were you able to book someone from the club? That was rude.
That was a little rude.
Yeah. Score a goal, man.
I know. Listen, what did you say, 250 minutes?
Almost 250. And Pablo said to the Apple TV broadcasters he would be surprised if Diego Luna is around after the summer transfer window.
That's the other part. If you need an attack and you've got guys that may be on their way out, where are you going to be after that? It's an interesting spot RSL is in. Yeah, we'll see who they wrangle up to join us tomorrow.
All right, there you go. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you, Bobby Marks, Tom Habershow, Tony Parks, and Easton Folster for any of the sound. Go to the website, ESPN700sports.com. Download our app. Take us on the go. That's how I listen to the station. The ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store, the Google Play Store. Then for what we do in our Space podcast page, it is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. Subscribe, rate, review. Say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars. Wherever you get your shows, we're there. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Monday evening. We'll talk to you on a Tuesday edition of The Drive right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network.